Chapter 1200. Returning bountifully. What? The Changyang clan used the origin formation? The schoolmaster and many saint rulers changed in expression when they heard about the origin formation. They were also in possession of an origin formation, and they understood its strength extremely well. It was exactly this that made them lose their composure. This was because even saint emperors could be easily killed off by the origin formation. It was just far too powerful. Yet the Changyang clan had failed to keep Jianchun and the others from leaving after using the formation. This obviously shocked them very much. At this moment, all the people who expressed their disagreement obediently shut up. They dared not say another word. The Changyang clan was enough to be ranked within the top 3 of all the protector clans. On the other hand, the Heaven's Incense School only had 6 saint kings, and not a single one at great perfection. Although they used the arts of poisoning, their strength was not on par with the Changyang clan. So how could they be opponents to people that even the Changyang clan could do nothing to? Schoolmaster, if they are telling the truth, we're probably not their opponents. At the same time, there are various poisonous grasses planted in our miniature space. If we end up fighting here, all the grasses will be destroyed. Those grasses are our lifeblood, so we cannot afford to lose them. The poison of Heaven's End may pose some harm to them, but the 4 great elders have greatly extended themselves from casting that skill in the death nest. They're still in seclusion and recuperating right now. We don't have enough power to cast the poison a second time, the old man said to the schoolmaster through a communication technique. He was a great elder of the protector clan, as well as the only saint king present other than the schoolmaster. Lejund also became extremely stern. If Jianchen and the others made their way into the miniature world, they would sustain losses far heavier than the Changyang clan. This is exactly what he wanted to see the least. This was because the poison arts of the protector clan could only be practiced with the corresponding poisonous grasses. They planted a large number of them in their miniature world, so if they were destroyed, it would affect the overall strength of the clan. It might even lead to a long period of decline for the clan. Okay, I agree to your request. Lejung was without choice and basically agreed in complete reluctance. Even with their heritage, the clan would buckle from the loss of so many high-class monster cores. Lejun bled inside when he thought about the 5 Class 9 monster cores. Jianchun received a large number of monster cores, a saint tier cultivation method, and heaven tier battle skills. At the same time, he respected the agreement and no longer made things difficult for the Heaven's Incense School. Jianchun's group returned to Lore City with the antidote and got Heiyu to consume it as soon as possible. Even though Heiyu's poison was not completely purged after consuming the antidote, his complexion took a definite turn for the better. Heiyu no longer needed to use his own powers to suppress the poison. He smiled even though his face blackened from the poison and said, "Finally done with this bloody poison of Heaven's End. My life was almost pulled into it. This poison sure is strong. It's good that you're fine. You almost just died to poison. So much for being a saint king at great perfection and being protected by origin energy armor," Hong Lian said in a mocking tone, as if she was making fun of him. Heiyu became awkward for once where he became speechless. No matter what, Senior Heiyu's problem all arose from me. If it weren't for the fact that I wanted to obtain the saint's fruit, Senior Hei, you would not have been poisoned either. Seniors, I really need to thank you for your assistance in the past few days. I will commit your gratitude to heart and never forget about it. Jianchen clasped his hands at the 3 of them in sincerity. He spoke from the bottom of his heart. If it were not for their help, he would not have been able to obtain the saint's fruit, nor would he have been able to seal up the Changyang clan, let alone use them as a deterrence against the Heaven's Incense School, to rob them of a large number of monster cores. Hong Lina looked at Jianchen. A faint red appeared in her pupils, as if balls of flames were leaping about inside. She said, "Jianchen, for you to stay alive would be the greatest way for you to repay us." Jianchen obviously attributed all of this to the winged tiger god, because he really could not think of why the 3 of them would follow him everywhere, if it were not for the winged tiger god. At the same time, the winged tiger god was the god of magical beasts while the 3 of them were magical beasts as well. Coupled with the fact that the rulers of the beast god continent wanted to scheme against the winged tiger god. It was rather straightforward why the three of them would step forward to protect the white tiger. Although Heiyu had received the antidote, there was still residual poison within him, so he still needed a few days. Jian Chen, Hong Lian, and Rui Jin all went their own ways after talking a little. The two of them had expended quite a lot of energy in the battle against the Changyang clan, so they both went off to recover. Jian Chen and Yu strolled through the large clan beside one another. All the patrolling guards they came across would kneel down on one knee and greet them as admiration burned in their eyes. Jian Chen paid no attention to the guards. All he thought about was how to split the monster cores he had just obtained. He did not plan on using them all himself. Although there was an astonished amount, the amount of energy he needed to reach the fourth layer with his chaotic body was just too much. Even after absorbing the monster cores, he would be nowhere close to breaking through. If he used the monster cores on the Changyang clan and flame mercenaries, their strength could indeed increase by quite a lot. Jian Chen's expression suddenly changed. He looked into the distance and saw 4 small specks appear in the sky. They shot toward the Changyang clan with lightning-like speed, entering Lore City in just a few seconds, and stopped outside the main entrance of the clan. They were 4 middle-aged men in blood-red robes. Each and every single one of them was expressionless and possessed cold eyes. They were completely emotionless, and a vague layer of baleful force seemed to revolve around them. It caused the surrounding temperature to plummet, such that they were unapproachable. 2 rubby old men appeared at the entrance like ghosts. They stared emotionlessly at the 4 middle-aged men, and one of them coldly questioned, "Why have you come, people from the Bloodsword sect?" "They've come for me." A clear voice rang out from behind. Jian Chen walked out, and Yu followed behind him. The 2 old men smiled amicably when they saw it was Jian Chen. They nodded at him before vanishing with a flash. Jian Chen did not know the names of the 2 old men. He only knew that they were saint rulers of the Zhu branch, so he should refer to them as great-grandfather in terms of seniority. The 4 protectors greet the sect master. The 4 middle-aged men all knelt on one knee and called out in unison. Jian Chen hurried to make them rise. The Changyang clan owed a debt of gratitude to the 4 protectors, since they had saved the entire clan before. He had never forgotten this. Jian Chen brought the 4 protectors to his own hall. He asked, "Protectors, is there any reason why you've suddenly come looking for me?" "Sect master. The old sect master has passed over the position quite a long time ago. The 4 of us have come under the orders of the vice sect master to invite the sect master back to the sect, so that we can hold the ceremony of succession, as well as plan the future of the sect," replied a protector. "Protectors, may I ask if there is anyone who is against me inheriting the position?" Jian Chen tapped the desk rhythmically with his finger, as he stared at the protectors in interest. "Sect master, there is no room for doubt about your strength, including the vice sect master. Everyone is extremely supportive of you taking on the position as sect master. No one has any disagreements," said the same protector. Jian Chen nodded slightly and said, "All right then, but before I go to the Bloodsword sect, there's some matter I need to deal with. Why don't the 4 of you stay in the clan for a few days, and I'll go with you back to the sect after I deal with these matters?" "As the sect master wishes." Afterward, Jian Chen found Changyang Ba and passed 500 Class 5 monster cores, 100 Class 6 monster cores, and 10 Class 7 monster cores he had obtained from the Heaven's Incense School to him to nurture the forces of the Changyang clan. Jian Chen did not care how Changyang Ba split the monster cores. Afterward, Jian Chen entered the artifact spirit. In the center of the space stood a majestic hall. Jian Chen boldly sat on the throne in the center of the hall. Behind him quietly stood a white-robed, scholarly middle-aged man. He was like a servant. The middle-aged man was the artifact spirit, the supreme ruler of the artifact space. At this moment, a group of several dozen people entered the hall in an orderly fashion. They stepped gently, and did not make any sounds at all. All of them were burly, thick-chested men who radiated with a bold presence. They were abnormally powerful. After consuming the serpent dragon's flesh and blood, their bodies had clearly become bigger. "We greet the captain." All 66 men dropped to one knee and thunderously yelled out. The commotion was so great that it contained an irresistible force. Jianshan said nothing. A special light flickered in his bright eyes as he slowly glanced over all of them. He became more satisfied and happy the more he looked before finally revealing a smile involuntarily. Suddenly, Jianshan stood up from the throne and walked down. He said, Good. Impressive indeed. You have been improving at a divine speed recently. Of the 66, 43 of you have reached the 6th cycle, while the remaining 23 are at the 4th cycle at the least. I believe that you will all be able to reach the 6th cycle without much time. You really have lived up to my wishes. Kair said, Captain, our current achievements are all due to Captain's nurturing without holding back at all. If we did not have your nurturing, we would only have been able to reach Earth's Saint Master at most with our talent. Reaching Heaven's Saint Master would only be an extravagant wish. That's right. If it weren't for Captain, we probably would still be hunting magical beasts in the forests just to eat. We might not have even been able to live till this day, dying in the mouths of magical beasts by now. Our current accomplishments are all because of Captain. Emotion said excitedly. To all of them, becoming a Heaven Saint Master had once been an extravagant wish. CSG now has a Patreon set up, where you can read up to 35 chapters ahead. Chapter 1201. Distributing monster cores. Jianshan was extremely satisfied. He said, I guarantee that you will definitely not halt at the level of a Heaven Saint Master, but at the level of a Saint Ruler, or even the godlike cultivation level in your eyes, Saint King. However, remember that you are not only loyal to me, you are also loyal to the Flame Mercenaries at the same time. You are a member of the Flame Mercenaries, and you will become their protector gods in the future. Captain, we can forget our names, but we will never forget your orders. A person with a large mustache exclaimed from the group. He was in high spirits, and his eyes were brimming with a confident belief. Jianshan revealed a smile. He also felt extremely proud when he saw the lively group, since he had personally nurtured all of them. He had groomed them from low-level mercenaries who struggled to make a living daily on the Tianyuan continent to the experts before him now. However, Jianshan had also paid a great price in order to create a group like this. Whether it was heavenly resources, monster cores, cultivation methods, or battle skills, he had used everything he could without holding back. Even organizations as powerful as ancient clans would not have been able to make such an investment. At the same, he had even went to the divine realm of the sea realm to collect divine water of the world specifically for them, just to make up for their innate deficiencies that prevented them from reaching Saint Ruler. At this moment, Jianshan pulled out another space ring and passed it to Kai. He said, There are 200 Class 6 monster cores, 30 Class 7 monster cores, a Saint tier cultivation method, and Heaven tier battle skills in there. Split it with those who are in need. Jianshan was willing to pay whatever price to get the group to reach his anticipated target of strength as soon as possible. The Flame Mercenaries were in too great of a need for their own powerful force. Yes, Captain. Kai excitedly accepted the space ring. Even his hand that held the ring trembled. His heart surged inside when he thought about all the monster cores inside the ring. Cultivate well. Once you become Saint Rulers, you can leave here and go to the outside world. Jianshan did not stick around for long. He left the artifact space after adding that. At the Changyang clan, it had been less than half a day since he had returned from the Heaven's Incense School. Almost all the high-class monster cores had been split up other than the Class 8 and 9 monster cores. Only 20 of the 60 Class 7 monster cores remained, 200 of the 600 Class 6 remained, and relatively more Class 5 monster cores remained, sitting at 2,500. Afterward, Jianshan requested Changyang Zhu Yinshao to create a space gate, proceeding to Flame City with Yu. Jianshan and Yu quietly passed through the palace-like city lord's estate in the center of the city, heading toward a heavily guarded study room. Jianshan used his powerful abilities as a 9th heavenly layer Saint Ruler to ensure that none of the many experts hidden in the surroundings discovered him, allowing him to enter the study silently. It was a very large and extravagant study, covering a surface area of several hundred square meters. The faint, unique smell of books lingered in the air. Right in the center of the room sat a woman in white robes, whose attention was completely focused on the book in her hands. She only seemed to be 20 years of age, and possessed a lovely appearance. Her glossy, black hair was kept in a coil with an exquisite pin. The hairpin shone with faint purple light. It had been crafted from invaluable purple gold. She possessed a ruler's presence that could only appear after maintaining a position of authority for many years. On the two sides of the desk stood a man and a woman. They were both Heaven Saint Masters, silently protecting the woman who read there. At this moment, the door to the room opened silently. Jian Chun and Yu Yu walked in side by side. Without any additional movements, the door closed automatically, but there was no sound during the entire process. The two Heaven Saint Masters kept an eye in the direction of the entrance, so they discovered Jian Chun and Yu Yu as soon as they walked through the door. Their gazes immediately sharpened, and just when they wanted to call out, they discovered that the space surrounding them had instantly frozen, and they were completely immobilized. They could not even speak. The lady at the desk sensed nothing. She was completely drawn in by the book, and only when Yu Yu arrived before the desk and knocked on it did the lady suddenly realize there were guests. However, she became stunned when she saw Jian Chun and Yu Yu, who had suddenly appeared, and then rejoiced. She immediately put down her book and arrived before Yu Yu. Grabbing her hands in a close manner, she excitedly said, "Brother, sister Yuer, you've come. Why didn't you send someone to inform me first?" Yu Yu smiled. "Sister Liener, we wanted to give you a surprise, so we came to visit you without notifying you. I hope you haven't become unhappy because of this." Bai Lian pouted and said in some displeasure, "Brother, sister, there's not enough time for me to be happy with your arrival, so how can I be unhappy?" Bai Lian arrived by Jian Chun's side and grabbed his other arm. She looked at him hopefully and said, "Brother, you're the captain of the Flame Mercenaries. Shouldn't you stay for a little longer now that you've come to your own territory?" "I might have to disappoint you then. I've come for a certain matter this time, so I'll have to leave very soon," Jian Chun smiled. Bai Lian immediately became dejected, but she knew that her brother had been running all over the place over the last few days. He indeed had a lot of matters to deal with, so she did not insist on him staying. Aren't you having it too easy as the captain? You throw such a big burden onto your sister, yet you don't bother with it at all yourself. All you do every day is travel and play." At this moment, an old voice rang out from outside. The door then opened, and Bai Hai walked in with his arms behind his back. Bai Hai had originally stayed at the bottom of Mercenary City with Huang Tianba, but he worried about Bai Lian's safety, so he had returned to Mercenary City. Jian Chun and Yu Yu greeted Bai Hai as juniors, and Jian Chun then rebuked, "Great-grandfather, I must disagree with what you said toward the end. I haven't been traveling and playing. I have been dealing with important matters instead. I don't care if you have important matters to attend to, or if you're running around playing. You better free up your sister soon, so she can break free from this mess and focus on cultivation. Otherwise, it'll interfere with her future." In Bai Hai's eyes, the Flame Mercenaries were nothing. He cared more about Bai Lian's personal strength. Even if someone managed to unite the entire continent one day, they would pass away without long if they did not possess absolute strength. Personal strength was far more important than anything else. CSG now has a Patreon setup, where you can read up to 35 chapters ahead. Chapter 1202, A Path of Severance. God, great-grandfather, stop. I don't want to be like you, locking myself up in a room all day, and staying there several months, or even years on end. It's so boring. I like to manage the Flame Mercenaries. Look, the Flame Mercenaries have become so prosperous under my management. This is much more interesting than locking yourself up every day. Bai Lian replied in satisfaction. She felt that she had accomplished much. Bai Hai angrily glared at her. He seemed very stern, but there was unconcealable affection in his eyes. He angrily said, "You're far too disobedient. What accomplishments can you achieve by spending all your time on this mess? If you don't cultivate properly, you will be wasting all the valuable heavenly resources your brother has spent on you. If you really want to help your brother, then cultivate properly. This is much more useful than managing this mess. No matter how well you manage this, You will not be as useful as a saint king. They can turn everything you've built into nothing with just a wave of their hand. Bai Lian found what Bai Hai said to be reasonable, so she did not rebuke him. She stuck out her tongue mischievously and grabbed one of Bai Hai's hands, shaking it gently. She sweetly said, "Great-grandfather, of course I understand that. Actually, you don't know how much harder I've been working on my cultivation lately." "How much harder?" "Humph. Do you really think that I don't know what you're doing just because I'm not by your side all the time? There's 24 hours in a day, and you only spend 4 or 5 hours cultivating. Is that called working hard?" Bai Hai had nowhere to vent his anger. He really could do nothing to his clever great-granddaughter right in front of her, and he would often become exhausted by what she did. As the most authoritative member of the Flame Mercenaries, Bai Lian actually avoided the furious Bai Hai. She arrived beside Jian Chun and looked at him pleadingly. "Brother, look how severe great-grandpa is. I'm the only girl in the family, and he always wants to lock me up in a dark, scary basement. I know you care for me the most, right? Please persuade him for me. I know your words are like an imperial edict. It's more useful than anything, and even Grandpa Bai Hai won't ignore them." "You brat." Bai Hai was utterly furious. He pointed at Bai Lian, but could say nothing for quite some time. Jian Chen looked at Bai Lian's pitiful appearance in affection and smiled. "Lian or Grandpa's right. Becoming powerful yourself is much more important than anything else. You should leave the many matters of the mercenaries to others when you need to." "Okay, brother, I understand." Clearly, Bai Lian listened to Jian Chen more. As soon as he said something, she became docile, but a mischievous light appeared in her eyes. She said, "Brother, if you stay and guard the city, a lot of the matters that I worry over will be gone. That way, I can spend more time on cultivation." Jian Chen stared at his sister, unsure of how to react. He said, "Lianer, I really don't have much time. How about this? I'll stay in the city for the next 2 days, and I'll work with Grandpa to guide you in your cultivation." Afterward, Jian Chen passed a space ring to Bai Lian before temporarily settling down in the city. The space ring contained all the remaining Class 5, 6, and 7 monster cores from the Heaven's Incense School. But all the Class 7 monster cores went to Bai Hai to hold. He only gave the other monster cores to Bai Lian to distribute. At the same time, in the desolate wilderness, a burly man in horrible condition walked with difficulty. He was disheveled, and his clothes were torn in many places. He was barefooted as well, so he seemed just like a beggar. A few vicious gashes were present on his body, all signs of being bitten by magical beasts or being cut by weapons. Even though the man was very heavily injured, his steps were still filled with vigor. He traveled like the wind, as if he was completely fine. The man stopped and pulled out a map to check. Afterward, he swept away his messy hair, revealing 2 eyes that were as profound as the starry sky. "With this speed, I'll be able to get to him in another month," mumbled the man before putting the map away and continuing on his way. At this moment, a figure flew over from afar. He landed and walked beside the disheveled man. He was a young person in blue robes, and only seemed to be around 30 years of age. His appearance was rather striking. "Kid, I just went to a city 100 kilometers away and bought some roast chicken and some good liquor. Let's sit down and have a good meal." The young man pulled out 2 roasted chickens from his space ring as he spoke to the disheveled man. He threw one over casually. The 2 of them clearly knew each other extremely well since they did not greet each other at all. Holding the roast chicken in one hand and a flask of liquor in the other, they sat down and began wolfing down the food. "Kid, I gotta give it to you for your determination and resolution. There's so many magical beasts you can ride, but you just have to insist on walking with your legs. The Tianyuan continent is so big. If you just use your legs, you'll never be able to walk from the east to the west even in your entire lifetime. Your home is so far away as well. Why don't I take you along with me as I travel? You probably need another year or 2 before you can walk back." The young man said with his mouth full. The disheveled man swallowed his mouthful of food and stared at the young man with his deep eyes. He seriously replied, "Senior, all life is wise, and all of it is nurtured by the world. We humans are only the few among them. As soon as the opportunity arises, we can comprehend the true essence of the world. The world is wondrous, and the earth that forms this world is filled with a vast and unbelievably wondrous power. When you walk on the ground with your 2 feet, you can sense this power. You can sense the veins of the world, and then comprehend the true essence of the world through the wondrous power and the veins. What are you saying? The earth has a vast and unbelievably wondrous power? Really? Why don't I feel it? The young man stood on the ground and walked around to confirm what he had just said. Senior, you can't sense it because your opportunity still has not arisen, or you lack something, the disheveled man replied in serious voice. He did not seem like he was joking at all. The young man broke into laughter. He sat back down next to the disheveled man and laughed. To think that I, great King Wang Yixiao, a great saint ruler, who's only a step away from Saint King, would be described so horribly by a mere earth saint master in such a place. This really is funny. Kid, what do I lack? What is that thing you say that I lack? You lack. The disheveled man sank into his thoughts. After pondering seriously for a while, he shook his head in confusion in the end. He said, I don't know what Senior lacks either. You really are one interesting kid. If it weren't for the fact that the cultivation method I practice is special, and I can feel whether someone is telling a lie or not, I would definitely think that you're tricking me. Kid, do you know what the outcome for those who trick me are? Feng Yixiao said. I can also feel that Senior is someone who kills without second thought, and that your hands are covered by the blood of countless people. All those who offend Senior end up dead without exception. The disheveled man responded at ease. You're not afraid? Feng Yixiao looked at the disheveled man. The man shook his head. The world has no attachments. When all sentient creatures are born, they also hold no attachments. The so-called 7 desires and 6 emotions only came into existence after birth. I walk a path of the world, a path of severance, a path of liberation, so I obviously need to sever my 7 emotions and 6 desires. I obviously do not fear death. I have already severed that fear. You sure are a weird kid. I've wandered the continent for over 1,000 years, and I've seen countless other people of all shapes and sizes. But you really are the first. You just said that you walk a path of severance, and that you will sever the 7 emotions and 6 desires. If that's the case, why do you still want to go home? If it's been severed already, is there still any point in returning? Feng Yixiao asked out of curiosity. I've already severed most of the emotions and desires that came into existence after birth, but I can't sever the last portion. The man suddenly became sorrowful. Tears rolled from his eyes and he painfully said, I can't forget my dad, much less my mum. My mum only has me as her only son, so if she loses me, she will be in so much pain that she would wish she was dead. And my sister and 2 brothers, I can't forget them, nor do I dare to forget them. I don't want to become a person who is heartless. I can't sever this last part, I can't. I can't. The disheveled old man had basically yelled out the last parts. He was filled with sorrow. Feng Yixiao stopped eating and stared at the man. Only after a long while later did he sigh gently. You walk a different path of cultivation. Although I am unable to understand just what it is, I know that the path is extremely brutal. It is not suitable for the current you, so if it doesn't work, just choose another. The disheveled man shook his head and said, I have a feeling that I have no other path I can continue down aside from this one. CSG now has a Patreon set up, where you can read up to 35 chapters ahead. Chapter 1203, Wolf King of Greed. Feng Yixiao, are your feelings reliable? Are you just going to believe in your feelings like this? Feng Yixiao weirdly looked at the disheveled man. This was the first time he had ever come across such an interesting Earth Saint Master in his long history of being alive. However, Feng Yixiao understood that the disheveled man before him was not particularly impressive in terms of strength, but he did possess a truly unique aspect, or Feng Yixiao would not bother with a mere Earth Saint Master with his current strength and prideful personality. The disheveled man nodded firmly. He said without any room for disagreement, I believe in my feelings very much. Ever since I began my journey on this path, I felt that they have not been wrong. Everything that I feel will happen. Oh, since your senses are so sharp, Then can I ask if you will forget people you don't want to forget? Feng Yixiao asked in much interest as he bit into his roast chicken. The disheveled man became very dejected and lost all appetite. He lowered his head and said with a heavy voice, I am afraid of thinking about that, and I am also afraid of sensing the future of that. I'm afraid that some sorrowful things will happen to me. The disheveled man fell silent for a little longer. He seemed to understand something. He deeply sighed and said, severing the emotions and desires is not forcing yourself to forget, but to break free from them. There should not be any pain in the entire process, only indifference. I have still yet to sever my emotions for my family, which is why I am in pain. But in the future, if I sever this unknowingly, I will never feel like this again. At that time, my family and my eyes will be nothing. I will forget everyone at that moment, including my mother. The disheveled man's voice was filled with deep sorrow. He knew extremely well that if he overcame this last obstacle, he probably would be able to reach an unmatched level of cultivation. His strength would drastically increase, but he would abandon all his emotions at the same time. He did not want to do this. He would rather be an ordinary person than abandon his connection with his parents, except he had no other choice. Right now, his fate seemed to have been predetermined. He could not stop if he wished. All he could do was proceed along the path. Feng Yixiao threw the last chicken bone far away, before downing the entire flask of liquor. Afterward, he stood up and said, Kid, since you're so sorrowful, let's not talk about this. Look at you. You're a man, yet you're about to cry just like a girl. I just happen to have matters I need to attend to. I've already spent quite a lot of time with you, so I can't waste any more time. I gotta go immediately. The disheveled man calmed down very quickly. He stood up and said, Senior, thank you for helping me in the past few days. If there is a chance, I will definitely return the favor. Feng Yixiao chuckled aloud. He said, Return the favor? Ha ha ha. You probably won't even remember who I am the next time we meet. Would there still be any favors to return? Senior, I definitely won't forget you. The disheveled man replied rather awkwardly. All right. Enough of this. Kid, aren't you going to the Jesson Kingdom? There's still over 100,000 kilometers. So you probably have to walk for a few years with just your legs. That just happens to be in the direction I'm traveling. So I'll just carry you with me. I can't take you all the way to Jesson Kingdom, but at least it'll cut down the distance you have to walk. Feng Yixiao said in an extremely straightforward manner. For a mere Earth Saint Master, to receive the help of a 9th heavenly layer Saint Ruler would be a great honor. However, the disheveled man behaved as usual. All he did was smile gratefully before calming down. He was not excited in any way. Feng Yixiao had grown accustomed to his calm demeanor long ago. Without saying anything more, he grabbed the man's shoulder and left extremely hastily. A white-robed, middle-aged man with an extremely ordinary appearance silently appeared where they had been after Feng Yixiao had left. He looked in the direction the two of them had traveled off to in a trance and mumbled, Changyang, who's at the last, crucial stage of breaking through to worldly transcendence. All he needs is one final step to overcome it. Changyang, who has experienced a lot during his journey after he left the Pure Heart Pavilion. He has experienced tests of life and death, and understood the various aspects of life, allowing him to take a solid step in worldly transcendence. It's just a pity that Feng Yixiao suddenly appeared halfway through. Not only did he fail to help Changyang Hu, he even ruined it all. Or Changyang Hu probably would have been able to sever the last part before the journey ended. Feng Yixiao is letting Changyang Hu arrive home sooner. I wonder if it'll affect anything. A Saint Ruler would actually become interested in a mere Earth Saint Master. Sigh, is this really the will of the heavens? Even the heavens have organized Changyang Hu to meet with his family in this last stage. Feng Yixiao hurried along using spatial force. He fused with the surrounding space and completely disappeared. Although he moved extremely quick, he was unaffected by the drag of air, so he moved in complete silence. The disheveled man being carried along with him could only look at the blurry landscape that shot past beneath him. When they flew over a city, he could not even see what the city looked like. In less than half a day, Feng Yixiao traversed several tens of thousand kilometers with his strength as a Saint Ruler at the 9th heavenly layer. In the end, He stopped 10 kilometers away from a small town. Kid, I can only take you here. You need to rely on yourself for the future journey. Take these purple coins, and buy some things you need when you travel. Feng Yixiao was straightforward and extravagant, throwing his space ring to the disheveled man. Senior, I don't need it. Kid, there's never been the case where I take back things I give out. Are you looking down on my giving you things? Feng Yixiao narrowed his eyes and unhappily asked. The disheveled man had no other choice. All he could do was accept the space ring obediently. Feng Yixiao patted his shoulder. Kid, look after yourself in the future. I hope you can still remember who I am when we meet again next time. With that, he flew away before the disheveled man could reply. Senior, I will definitely still remember you when we meet next time. The disheveled man yelled in the direction Feng Yixiao had disappeared. The disheveled man did not leave, and instead stood where he was, silently gazing in the direction had left Feng Yixiao. The two of them were strangers to one another, yet Feng Yixiao had actually helped him so much in such a selfless manner despite being a saint ruler. This touched him deeply. He could clearly feel Feng Yixiao's sincerity toward him during the days they had spent together. Feng Yixiao did not have any other intentions. Suddenly, the disheveled man's eyes darkened. There was no light at all in the darkness. It was like that had become a vast, infinite, and boundless space of darkness. If someone else looked him in the eyes, they would feel that their souls would be sucked in. But the next moment, faint glimmers of light suddenly began to flicker in his dark eyes. They were like the stars of the night sky. His eyes seemed to contain some other space, some other universe. Suddenly the man violently jerked. He returned his senses at that moment, and his eyes immediately returned to normal. He cried out, "Oh no, Senior's going to die for sure. There's no chance of him surviving." With that, the disheveled man began to sprint in Feng Yixiao's direction. A mysterious force seemed to surge out of the ground with every step, pushing him forward. Although he was only an Earth Saint Master, his current speed was even greater than Heaven Saint Masters flying. Even wind-attributed sixth cycle Heaven Saint Masters would not be as fast as him. Jian Chen, Yu Yu, Bai Lian, Bai Hai, and the others currently sat around a table as they ate in the Flame Mercenaries' den. Even Duge Feng was present. Although Jian Chen had basically subdued Duge Feng as a servant back in Mercenary City, he had always treated him like a brother and never as an outsider. In reality, Duge Feng lived up to Jian Chen's hopes as well. He forsook his own time to cultivate, and took up the position of a disciplinary elder, pouring his heart into the development of the mercenaries. Duge Feng had always been a quiet person, so he did not say much at all at the table. He seemed rather cold. Duge Feng, it really has been busy for you during these past years. For the development of the mercenaries, you've even given up your own cultivation time. If you want to let go of everything you're doing right now, you can come find Bai Lian at any time. After all, your personal cultivation is more important. Possessing great strength is far more useful than possessing great authority, Jian Chen sincerely said. In his eyes, authority was not important at all. Even kings would need to lower themselves in front of saint rulers. Even one of the 8 great kingdoms like the Qinhuang kingdom would be nothing in front of saint kings. A wave of the hand would be all that was needed to reduce so many years of work into nothing. Now that the foundation of the Flame Mercenaries is stable, I need to spend another 2 years consolidating it, and then I can let go of everything I'm doing. I'll focus on cultivating after that. Duge Feng expressionlessly replied. His voice was rather cold. Jian Chen laughed. At that time, I will make you into a saint ruler as soon as possible, and give you the chance to become a saint king. CSG now has a Patreon set up, where you can read up to 35 chapters ahead. Chapter 1204. Feng Yixiao's enemy, a sliver of burning desire, finally appeared in Duge Feng's eyes. This was a desire to become a saint king. Jian Chen's words had influenced him very much. It's just a pity that Sans is out on a mission and not here. Otherwise, there would be one more person at the table with us. Speaking of which, Sans should take up the position as captain. Jian Chen rather regretfully lamented. The Flame Mercenaries may have been founded by Sans' father, but his strength is still low. If he becomes captain, It'll become difficult for everyone to follow his orders. It might result in fractures within the mercenaries as well, Dugafeng fearlessly replied. Jianchen did not get mad. Right now, we need Sans to grow up properly. Once he has enough strength, I'll pass on the position to him, so he can take over his father's organization. I'll be able to hand it over for his father. With that, Jianchen's eyes froze. He looked toward the east. He seemed to be able to see through many obstructions, and everything that happened outside could not escape his eyes even though he was inside. There's someone who has come with ill intentions. Looks like I've come at the perfect time, Jianchen mentioned in a heavy voice as he slowly lowered his cup. What? Someone's come looking for trouble? Bai Lian obviously heard Jianchen's mutterings. She became shocked. There was no one on the continent who did not know the name of the Flame Mercenaries. Ever since they had taken the city back from the Extinguishing Alliance, they had established their strength, such that all the major organizations on the continent would fear them. There was no one who dared to cause trouble for the Flame Mercenaries now, so Bai Lian had even begun to doubt if she had heard what Jianchen had said correctly. Surprise appeared in Bai Hai's eyes as well. Other than the 10 protector clans of the continent, there was no one who would dare to provoke them with Jianchen's infamy as the captain. Even the 10 protector clans were extremely fearful of Jianchen. Perhaps it's a group even more tremendous than the protector clans? At this moment, an odd thought actually crossed Bai Hai's head, but he soon made a self-deprecating smile. Suddenly, a vast presence appeared in the sky, almost enveloping the entire city. The presence possessed the violence and boldness of a vicious beast. The howls of wolves seemed to ring out when the presence appeared. This was the powerful presence of a 9th heavenly layer saint ruler. It immediately pressed down upon countless mercenaries in the city to the point where they could not breathe. Many people became pale white, as they felt like a mountain was squashing their chest, suffocating them. The mercenaries were not powerful. There were only a few heaven saint masters, and most of them were not even earth saint masters, so they were unable to endure the presence of a saint ruler. A young man who seemed to be around 30 years of age hovered in the air above the city with his arms crossed. His eyes were slightly closed, and he was emotionless, staring fixedly at the city lord's estate below. Who dares to cause trouble in Flame City? Name yourself. Someone yelled out from the estate, and with that voice, 5 old men shot into the sky from various parts of the estate. They were lightning fast, and were out of the building in a flash before disappearing from where they were. They reappeared in the sky, facing the young man. The 5 saint rulers were all people who had joined the Flame Mercenaries. Aside from Bai Hai, they were the only other saint rulers in the entire city. The black-robed man on one side clearly recognized the young man among the 5 of them. His eyes narrowed, and his complexion became rather unnatural. He exclaimed, "It's actually you, the Wolf King of Greed, Feng Yixiao." The young man glared at the old man and coldly smiled. "Gu Tu, I've searched you for 5 whole decades. I never thought that you'd actually be hiding in the Flame Mercenaries, which sure was unexpected. I let you escape last time, but I'd like to see where you run this time." With that, Feng Yixiao's presence skyrocketed. The powerful energy of a 9th heavenly layer saint ruler leaked from his body, which vaguely condensed into a howling wolf. Immediately, the wind began to blow wildly as energy of the world surged messily through the air. The 5 saint ruler all became extremely stern, as fear filled the depths of their eyes. Their senses were exceptional, and they could tell that Feng Yixiao was at the peak of the 9th heavenly layer. He was a terrifying existence with half a foot planted across the threshold of Saint King, so he was even more terrifying than most 9th heavenly layer saint rulers. On the other hand, the strongest of the 5 of them had only reached the 5th heavenly layer recently, while the weakest was only at the 2nd heavenly layer. They were nowhere near Feng Yixiao's level, so even if they worked together, they would not be able to defeat Feng Yixiao if they really began to fight. Feng Yixiao, this is the base of the Flame Mercenaries. I am a great protector of the mercenaries, so I cannot allow you to act so brazenly here. Are you not afraid of offending the Flame Mercenaries and declaring war against us? Gu Tu asked. His enmity with Feng Yixiao was irreconcilable, and he had almost died to Feng Yixiao's hands 50 years ago, but he managed to flee in the end out of luck. Now that Feng Yixiao had come knocking on the door again, he was even more powerful than 50 years ago. Gu Tu could not flee even if he wanted to, so all he could do was rely on the flame mercenaries to scare him away. Feng Yixiao's killing intent in his eyes became denser. He coldly said, "Gu Tu, this is the enmity between the two of us. It has nothing to do with the flame mercenaries, so quit trying to scare me off by bringing them up." Gu Tu laughed aloud. He looked at Feng Yixiao like he was looking at a joke. Legend has it that the Wolf King of Greed is afraid of nothing, and always does as he wishes. No one can stop him, much less change his mind. Looks like that is untrue today, being scared like this by the flame mercenaries. Feng Yixiao's eyes grew colder as fury filled his face. Powerful killing intent began to radiate out uncontrollably. What Gu Tu had said had completely agitated him. "Feng Yixiao, you will never have the chance to kill me. Of course, unless you don't want to live, since you are taking on the risk of becoming a public enemy of the flame mercenaries by attempting to kill a great protector of the flame mercenaries." Gu Tu became even more fearless when he saw how Feng Yixiao was fearful of the flame mercenaries. He began laughing aloud. Back then, he had almost passed away after being hunted down by Feng Yixiao, so he hated him very much. He could finally vent all of his anger now. CSG now has a Patreon setup, where you can read up to 35 chapters ahead. Chapter 1205. Changyang whose arrival 1. Feng Yixiao was an obstinate, unruly and prideful person. Coupled with his dignity as a 9th heavenly layer saint ruler, how could he hold himself back against the provocation of an ant-like existences in his eyes? Even though he was very fearful of the flame mercenaries, he could not bear with being laughed at by an ant. "Gu Tu, do you really think that I will let you go just because you've joined the flame mercenaries? You've underestimated me far too much. If I want to kill someone, that person is dead for sure," Feng Yixiao icily said. With that, all that was left was an afterimage. He charged toward Gu Tu at an extremely great speed, arriving by his side instantly. He used his right hand to reach for Gu Tu's neck. Saint force surged in that hand, so it seemed to have become an extremely sharp wolf's claw. Gu Tu had never expected Feng Yixiao to actually attempt to touch him. He paled in fright and retreated as quickly as possible, using all he had to avoid Feng Yixiao's lightning-fast attack. The disparity between their strength was just far too great. It could be described as a chasm, so Gu Tu could only dodge when faced with Feng Yixiao's attacks. He did not even have the ability to fight back. Blood scattered through the air. Even though Gu Tu had used everything he had, he was still unable to dodge the attack. His neck had been reduced to a bloody mess, while a large chunk of flesh had been clawed away. It was a vicious wound. Warm blood spurted from Gu Tu's neck like a fountain. It shot into the air like the blooming of a beautiful flower. Gu Tu clenched his wound tightly as he shot back. Fear filled his eyes. The wound on his neck would have already been fatal to a heaven saint master. But as a saint ruler, he would be fine even if he lost his body, since his soul would be fine. "Wolf King, why? You are declaring war on the flame mercenaries. Our great captain will never let you go." Gu Tu cried out desperately as he flew back in a panic. His voice had become extremely hoarse due to the injury of his neck. Feng Yixiao said nothing. His face was sunken and filled with icy cold killing intent. He shot past the 4 other saint rulers with a slight motion and pursued Gu Tuesday. "Wolf King, you are acting far too brazenly to declare war against the flame mercenaries. Great protectors, please immediately punish him to protect the power of the mercenaries. Our dignity and honor cannot be sullied like this by the Wolf King, or none of us will be let off easily when Captain gets around to punishing us." Gu Tu cried out urgently in attempt to persuade the 4 other saint rulers to keep Feng Yixiao busy. The 4 saint rulers immediately shivered inside when they heard the captain mentioned. The light in their eyes began to flicker, and they became hesitant. They possessed both fear and respect for their saint king captain. They really could not afford to be punished by the captain. Feng Yixiao suddenly sent an icy cold gaze toward the 4 of them, perhaps due to the fact that he had sensed that they had changed their minds. The 4 saint rulers leapt in fright inside from the glance. At that moment, All four of them seemed to feel like they were suffocating, greatly shocking them. This was not the first time the four of them had experienced something like this. But this was a feeling that could only be caused by Saint Kings. Yet they had actually sensed it from Feng Yixiao right now, which they found to be quite unbelievable. Looks like Feng Yixiao will be able to break through to Saint King very soon. At that moment, similar thoughts crossed all of their heads with some envy. Protectors, listen to me. This is the enmity between Gutu and me. It has nothing to do with you. However, if you interfere, you cannot blame me for not showing some respect to your captain, Feng Yixiao coldly said before continuing to pursue Gutu's day. The four saint rulers remained exactly where they were. They did not move no matter what Gutu said. Feng Yixiao's strength filled them with fear, and he had even said what he would do if they did interfere. They were not stupid enough to seek their own deaths. Gutu could not fight Feng Yixiao at all. He was littered with wounds now. Other than the injury on his neck, Feng Yixiao had caused a fist-sized hole to his chest where his heart was. Thus, his heart had been reduced to mush in Feng Yixiao's hand, while one of his arms was severed as well. He was in a miserable state. Gutu, I'd like to see how you flee this time. But don't worry, I won't kill you immediately. I'll torture you viciously first, and then let you die in excruciating pain. Feng Yixiao sneered. His right hand seemed to have transformed into a sharp wolf's claw, constantly raking Gutu's body and clawing away blood and flesh. Heavily injured, Gutu was like a lamb waiting to be butchered. He could not help but cry out in a chilling fashion from the pain. He roared, "Wolf King, the captain will not let you go. You kill me today, and you'll end up the same as me not much later. I'll be waiting for you in hell." With that, Gutu grunted again. A piece of flesh near his waist had been carved away by Feng Yixiao. Stop. A great protector of the flame mercenaries is not someone you can humiliate like this. An old but clear voice suddenly rang out from the city lord's estate. Afterward, an old man furiously shot into the sky as a heavy and powerful presence wrapped around him. Feng Yixiao glanced at Bai Hai, who flew over from below. He said, "Another saint ruler at the 7th heavenly layer. But that's still not enough to stop me. Gutu, I originally planned to let you live a little longer, but looks like I need to finish you off immediately to prevent any unnecessary problems." Feng Yixiao no longer tortured Gutu's day. With a thought, the space around Gutu froze, completely immobilizing him. Even in his peak condition, Gutu would have to use several attacks at full strength to break through the frozen space of a 9th heavenly layer saint ruler. Now that he was heavily injured, he could not even use 30% of his full strength. He was completely helpless against the frozen space. He was only left helplessly watching as Feng Yixiao approached him in an aggressive manner. "Save me, Bai Hai." Gutu called for help in panic. Faced with the threat of death, he was filled with fear. Unfortunately, Feng Yixiao's right fingers had already stabbed deep into his head right after what he had said. Gutu's body suddenly froze before becoming limp, as if he had lost all power over his body. His wide-open eyes quickly lost their light as well. His soul was unable to escape in time, being dissipated by Feng Yixiao. "How dare you? Sir, you are the first person who has ever killed a great protector of the flame mercenaries out in the open." Bai Hai roared out. He was utterly furious, and at the same time, a huge sword that was the width of a palm appeared in his hand. Pure and powerful water-attributed saint force wrapped around the sword as the surrounding space shook slightly from the terrifying energy. It began to twist. Fourth miracle water of Bai Soul Chaser. Bai Hai knew that Feng Yixiao was very powerful. Yelling out, he used a saint-tier battle skill to deal with him. Immediately, a vast pressure descended from the sky, squashing him like an invisible mountain. The pressure was so great that Feng Yixiao sank slightly in the air. There were 4 forms to the battle skill of the Bai family. Each form belonged to a specific level: the human tier, earth tier, heaven tier, and saint tier. There were 2 techniques for the saint tier battle skill. One was an attack soul chaser, while the second was a fleeing technique absolute rebirth. Bai Hai was bathed in a dense water blue light. He raised his sword high up into the air before swinging it with lightning-like speed. The sword easily cut through space, which was ripped apart like a piece of paper, extending toward Feng Yixiao at an unbelievable speed. Looking closer, it would not have been difficult to sense the pulse of a sword, invisible to the naked eye, hidden within the rapidly expanding crack. It was the movement of the pulse that cracked the space. Although there was no earth-shaking commotion, its power was evident. Feng Yixiao drew his right hand from Gutu's head. Without even glancing at the corpse, he allowed it to fall to the ground. He said, "I never thought that you would know a Saint-tier battle skill. It is indeed powerful. With your strength at the 7th heavenly layer, it is more than enough to deal with the Saint Ruler at the 9th heavenly layer. But it's a pity that your opponent is me, the Wolf King of Greed, Feng Yixiao." Feng Yixiao remained composed in front of Baihai's Saint-tier battle skill. He hurled a fist and surging energy poured from it. It instantly turned into a wolf, colliding with Baihai's Saint-tier battle skill. The wolf collided with the sword pulse, and the two of them silently disappeared. There was no shockwave at all. Both were reduced to the energy of the world. Baihai's eyes widened as disbelief plastered across his face. His Saint-tier battle skill had actually been nullified by such a casual counterattack. He found it rather difficult to accept. Chapter 1206. Changyanghu's arrival too. Baihai's Saint-tier battle skill was easily nullified by Feng Yixiao, which completely stunned Baihai. Even the 4 saint rulers in the distance were filled with disbelief as well. They knew that Feng Yixiao was extremely powerful, and that they would not be his opponent even if they worked together. However, Baihai was still a 7th heavenly layer saint ruler. He still may not have been Feng Yixiao's opponent, but he was much closer at the very least. Coupled with the fact that he had used a saint-tier battle skill, it was enough to pose a threat to some saint kings. However, Feng Yixiao had actually completely nullified it with a simple strike. His strength was so terrifying that it shocked everyone present. This was because in their eyes, only a saint king could easily nullify a saint-tier battle skill from a 7th heavenly layer saint ruler. Feng Yixiao did not do anything else. He glanced at Baihai indifferently and said, "Since my enemy's dead, I should leave as well." With that, he turned around and flew off into the distance. He had heard about the flame mercenaries, and did not wish to completely offend this powerful organization. However, Feng Yixiao suddenly froze at this very moment. He came to a halt as his composed expression became extremely stern. He suddenly turned around and glanced in the direction of the city lord's estate with shining eyes. A meter-wide sword chi appeared out of nowhere and shot toward him with lightning-like speed. Like a streak of light, the sword chi possessed a shocking, violent, and destructive presence. It ripped through the space and caused the surrounding energy of the world to tremble like it was quaking in fear. Even the saint rulers and Feng Yixiao shivered inside. Feng Yixiao became extremely stern. Due to his special cultivation method, he possessed senses and instincts far sharper than an ordinary person. He could feel the threat of death on the black sword chi. The pressing presence and icy cold killing intent made him feel like he was suffocating. The sword chi moved extremely quick, so fast that Feng Yixiao could not even dodge it. It passed through his chest like a hot knife through butter, carving out a fist-sized hole. Feng Yixiao grunted as a mouthful of blood spurted out. It turned into a bloody mist as it rained down. He became extremely pale at that moment, and lost his ability to levitate, falling out of the sky and toward the ground. Bang! Feng Yixiao struck the ground, and a huge crater formed in the soft soil. Dust was kicked into the air. The saint rulers all became stunned by the sudden occurrence. None of them had thought that the imposing Feng Yixiao would be so weak before the sword chi. "Captain, it's Captain. Captain's returned." Very soon, a saint ruler thought through everything and cried out in joy. The dark energy with its terrifying presence filled with violence and destruction is something that only Captain Jianchun can control. Fantastic! I never thought that Captain Jianchun had returned at this crucial moment. With Captain Jianchun, the Wolf King's dead for sure. Our flame mercenaries are not one to be stepped over like that. The 4 other saint rulers were filled with excitement just like Baihai. Although they had never seen Jianchun before, they were extremely familiar with Jianchun's chaotic force, since this never-before-seen energy had become a representation of Jianchun. Although no one recognized the chaotic force, The unique presence of the energy had become known to many experts of the continent. Outside the city, Feng Yixiao climbed out of the crater with difficulty. He knelt on one knee with a pale face as his body gently trembled in an uncontrollable manner. His face was filled with pain and blood spurted from his chest wound like a fountain, dyeing all the soil red. Feng Yixiao was in excruciating pain. When the sword qi had passed through his chest before, a small amount of residual chaotic force was left behind, which was now rampaging violently through his body. His organs and blood vessels had all been reduced to a mess by the chaotic force. Even when he used all his power to suppress and resist the rampaging chaotic force, it was not enough to stop the chaotic force, let alone wipe it out. Jie Jianchen, I never thought that the captain would actually be in the city today, Feng Yixiao growled. He had heard many rumors regarding Jianchen, so he immediately guessed the identity of the person who had shot out the sword qi. A white-robed figure quickly flew toward Feng Yixiao before stopping 3 steps in front of him. He was a young man who seemed to be in his 20s. He was handsome and possessed defined facial features that radiated a heroic spirit. His eyes were cold, and he did not give off any presence at all. He seemed just like an ordinary person. The young man stood with his arms crossed as he stared emotionlessly at Feng Yixiao. He said, "You sure are courageous to come kill a person of my flame mercenaries, as just a mere saint ruler." Feng Yixiao raised his head to look at the young man. His eyes narrowed slightly when he caught sight of the young man's face. Although this was the first time he had personally seen him, he had seen many images of the young man in the past. "It really is you, Jianchen." Feng Yixiao growled as he sighed inside about his luck. Feng Yixiao was bold enough to come to the flame mercenaries all by himself to kill Gu Tu, because he was certain that the captain was not in the city. Coupled with that fact that he hated a wandering lifestyle, and that he was at the edge of breaking through, he planned on killing off his enemy before settling down in some desolate region to cultivate. At that time, Jianchen would not be able to find him no matter how great his abilities were. But he had never thought that Jianchen would happen to be in the city. His original plan was sound, but fate had other ideas. Chapter 1207. Changyang whose arrival 3. Jianchen, my enmity with Gu Tu is personal. It has nothing to do with your flame mercenaries. So are you trying to interfere with our personal matters? Feng Yixiao growled. Even though he knew that the person before him was undefeatable, he felt no fear at all. Your enmity with Gu Tu has nothing to do with me. But Gu Tu is still a member of my flame mercenaries. Am I really supposed to let people kill off members of the flame mercenaries as they wish? Not to mention, you killed him right in the open, right in front of countless other members of the mercenaries. Jianchen replied in an extremely indifferent voice. Feng Yixiao knew that he was done for today after listening to Jianchen's reply. He clenched his teeth and was still rather unwilling to give in. He said, "Jianchen, you probably had already discovered me when I had arrived with your abilities. Why do you have to deal with me right after I killed Gu Tu and not before?" At this moment, Bai Hai and the 4 other saint rulers arrived beside Jianchen as well. The 4 of them looked at Jianchen with unhideable admiration as well as some fear. Jianchen looked at Feng Yixiao again. He turned around and flew back toward the city. He indifferently commanded, "Finish him off on the spot." "Yes, Captain," the 4 saint rulers responded at the same time. Excitement filled all their eyes. Killing a 9th heavenly layer saint ruler was extremely stimulating to them, as well as a great honor. Bai Hai looked at Feng Yixiao with some regret. He gently shook his head before turning and returning to the city as well. Bai Hai felt extremely regretful, because someone who was just about to reach Saint King would die just like this. The level of a Saint King was a realm of cultivation that Bai Hai had longed for himself. The 4 saint rulers all smiled viciously. They had been deterred by Feng Yixiao to the point where they had not dared to do anything. They only helplessly watched as their companion was killed off. They felt extremely oppressed inside. And now they could finally vent their feelings. Looks like today is my death day. To think that I've wandered for all these years killing so many people. Even experts more powerful than me would fail to take my life. But in the end, I will die in the hands of a few ants instead. What a pity, what a pity. Feng Yixiao sighed at the sky as he was filled with regret. Although he was only struck by a single attack from Jian Chun, his wounds were extraordinarily severe. The destructive chaotic force rampaged within his body, and he could not suppress it at all. Every moment his wounds rapidly became worse. He had completely lost the ability to fight now. Although he could flee in the form of a soul, Feng Yixiao did not believe he had that ability in front of Jian Chun. The outcome in the end would still be the same. The four saint rulers all smiled viciously as they lifted their saint weapons. Killing a ninth heavenly layer saint ruler was something they felt they could take pride in, which was why they planned to finish off Feng Yixiao together. Stop! At this moment, a loud shout echoed over from the distance. As it came from just too far away, it had become extremely faint when it arrived where Feng Yixiao was. However, they all heard it clearly. Jian Chun jerked slightly, and suddenly looking in the direction of the voice. On the horizon, a black speck had suddenly appeared. It was approaching the area with lightning-like speed. Although it was very far away, Jian Chun could see the person clearly with his eyes. Immediately, his indifferent eyes began to shine brighter as he stared fixedly at the black speck. Disbelief filled his face. The four saint rulers did not care who the person was. They swung their saint weapons at the same time, chopping at his heart, throat, head, and forehead. Feng Yixiao could only watch helplessly as the four saint weapons rapidly drew near. He did not even have the power to dodge due to the injuries from the chaotic force. Stop! Don't harm Senior Feng! The person yelled again. The voice was filled with panic, but it was still not enough to stop the four saint rulers. Jian Chun's face changed slightly when he heard that. Without any hesitation, he flicked a finger and shot out 4 weak sword qi toward the saint weapons of the saint rulers. Ding! 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 With 4 crisp sounds that sounded like metal colliding, the saint weapons were deflected by Jian Chun's sword qi. They swept past Feng Yixiao, and in the end, it struck the ground and produced a great hole with a loud boom. The 4 saint rulers looked at Jian Chun in surprise, and were all filled with confusion. You are dismissed, said Jian Chun, but he remained focused on the figure that drew closer and closer. Yes, Captain, the 4 saint rulers respectfully replied, and obediently stepped away, after putting away their saint weapons. Jian Chun's orders were like the edict of a ruler. Even though they were all confused by his actions, none of them questioned him. The figure drew closer and closer, and his appearance could gradually be made out. He was a disheveled but extremely burly man in tattered clothing. His messy hair covered most of his face, and the only portion that could be seen was dirty. It was covered with dirt. He seemed like a beggar. The 4 saint rulers could not help but shift their gaze toward the disheveled man who ran over. They were extremely curious. They wondered just who this person was. They wanted to know who was enough to change the captain's decision of killing Feng Yixiao, and make him personally deflect their saint weapons to save him. However, when they saw the man, gleams of light flickered through their eyes at the same time. As saint rulers, they could obviously tell that the man was only a Earth Saint Master. But he ran so quickly that even wind-attributed 6th cycle Heaven Saint Masters were no match for him. Even with Heaven-tier battle skills, it was impossible for an Earth Saint Master to run at such a speed. The beggar-like man ran to the side of Feng Yixiao with lightning-like speed, as if he did not notice the other people standing around. He dropped down to lift up the heavily injured Feng Yixiao and asked in worry, Senior Feng, are you all right? Feng Yixiao obviously recognized the man that he had just separated with. A sliver of surprise flashed through his eyes as he weakly asked, Kid, why do you come here? And how do you catch up? Senior Feng, I felt that you were in danger when you left, so I immediately chased after you. It's fortunate I wasn't too late, the disheveled man seriously replied. He was secretly relieved inside, extremely glad that he had made it in time. You dumb brat. How can matters that even I can't change be changed by you? Leave here immediately, or I might end up dragging you in and causing trouble for you as well. Feng Yixiao powerlessly explained as he coughed blood. His injuries were still worsening, and it had even become rather difficult for him to speak. He even suspected that if Jian Chun did not kill him, he would only be able to last for another quarter of an hour or so. If he was a true Saint King, He might have been able to temporarily suppress the chaotic force if he used everything he had. But too bad he was not quite there yet. Jianchen stared blankly at the disheveled man. His eyes were wide open with disbelief visible across his face. "Be brother." Only a long while later did Jianchen involuntarily mutter a word. His voice was filled with surprise. Didn't his brother go to the Pure Heart Pavilion? Why would he have appeared here of all times? And why was he in such a horrible shape? Chapter 1208. Jianchen's worried Changyang, who became stunned as well when he heard the extremely familiar voice. Instinctively, he looked toward Jianchen and recognized the handsome young man at first glance. The young man was his youngest brother that he had not seen in quite a few years. His eyes immediately became filled with surprise, and he asked in astonishment, "Brother, how is it you?" However, he soon understood everything once he saw the huge city walls completely forged from tungsten alloy. He had never thought that he would arrive at the Flame Mercenaries' den by chasing Feng Yixiao. Jianchen rushed over to Changyang, whose side with a long step, as he looked at him in excitement and doubt. He asked, "Brother, didn't you go to the Pure Heart Pavilion? Why have you suddenly appeared? And why are you in such a horrible shape? Did the Pure Heart Pavilion?" Jianchen paused there, but the meaning was self-evident. Everyone present understood what he meant. Jianchen suspected that Changyang, who had been booted from the Protector clan. Or how could he have ended up in such a miserable state? Even his clothes were not in one piece. Feng Yixiao immediately became shocked by what Jianchen had said. Never did he think that the interesting kid that he had come across during his journey would be a disciple of a Protector clan. Other than that, Changyang, whose identity shocked him even more. He was actually the elder brother of the Flame Mercenaries' captain, Jianchen, which filled him with disbelief. Changyang, who obviously guessed what Jianchen meant as well. He shook his head gently and said, "Brother, it's not what you think. Let's talk about it later." Changyang, who paused and glanced at the heavily injured Feng Yixiao in excruciating pain. He said, "Brother, just why did you and Senior Feng fall out? Why have you beaten to Senior Feng to such a degree?" Jianchen glanced at Feng Yixiao with some mixed feelings. He asked, "Brother, do you know each other?" Changyang, who examined Feng Yixiao's wound as he said, "Brother, Senior Feng has saved my life before, so can you let him go for your older brother?" Jianchen agreed without a second thought before striding over to Feng Yixiao's side. He gently pressed his hand on Feng Yixiao's shoulder, sucking away the residual strand of chaotic force. Feng Yixiao's face loosened immediately once he was free from the torture of the chaotic force. However, he still felt shocked because of the energy used by Jianchen. The energy was just too terrifying. If it remained within him, he probably would have passed away without anyone else taking part. The four saint rulers looked at each other. They had never thought that they would witness something so dramatic. The Wolf King of Greed, who had rushed over aggressively to kill a saint ruler of the Flame Mercenaries, had actually known Jianchen's elder brother, Changyang Hu. They were speechless. On the other hand, Bai Hai was very calm as well. He did not seem to care that Feng Yixiao had slain a great protector of the Flame Mercenaries. With a flip of his hand, Jianchen drew 3 thumb-sized pills from his space ring and passed them to Feng Yixiao. He said, "Since you've saved my brother's life before, I will no longer pursue the death of the protector. Here are 3 Class 6 Radiant Spirit pills. They won't be enough to completely heal your wounds, but they can allow you to recover some strength for battle. I have my own medicine." Feng Yixiao did not accept Jianchen's pills, and instead pulled out a jade bottle from his space ring. He poured all the pills in it into his mouth, before immediately circulating his energy to heal. He was extremely heavily injured. Although the chaotic force had been sucked back by Jianchen, he needed to stabilize his condition as soon as possible, or it might even lead to future side effects if it continued to worsen. Jianchen put his pills away awkwardly before turning to Changyang Hu. "Brother, I'll take you back to Flame City. We haven't seen each other in quite a few years, so let's catch up properly." Changyang Hu wanted to catch up as well. It had indeed been quite a long time since he had last seen Jianchen, so he had a lot he wanted to say. However, when he looked at Feng Yixiao, he became hesitant again. He said, "Brother, I'll watch over Senior Feng. Once he recovers, I'll come to Flame City. Jianchen nodded before telling the 4 saint rulers to return themselves. He stayed behind with Changyang, who while Baihai had returned to the city after greeting Changyang Hu. 4 hours later, Feng Yixiao opened his eyes. He was still rather pale. Although he did not make a full recovery after 4 hours, he had regained some strength. Jianchen and Changyang Hu spoke during those 4 hours, so he finally understood Changyang Hu's current circumstances. However, as soon as he thought about the fact that his brother might end up forgetting about their brotherhood in the future, Jianchen felt pained. In reality, Jianchen had discovered what was happening with Changyang Hu several years ago. Back then, when Changyang Hu was limbless, he had already begun to display an abnormal mental state. He had never thought that after so many years, Changyang Hu would have traveled further and further down that path. He had already severed most of his 7 emotions and 6 desires, and all that was left was his sentimental feelings. Senior Feng, you've woken up. How has the recovery gone? Changyang Hu stopped talking with Jianchen when he saw Feng Yixiao open his eyes. He arrived by his side and asked in concern Feng Yixiao's opinion of Changyang, who had undergone some minute changes now. He could not help but laugh aloud when he heard Changyang, who asked about his well-being in such a concerned manner. He stood up and said, I've recovered 30% and can run now. Kid, I never thought that your identity would be something so impressive, truly catching me off guard. A few days ago, I saved your life, and now you've saved mine, so we no longer owe each other anything. Alright, I won't say anything more. Farewell. I hope that you will still remember me the next time we meet. Feng Yixiao walked away as he spoke. By the time he finished talking, he had already left. Senior Feng, I will definitely still remember you the next time we meet. Changyang Hu cried out to Feng Yixiao. Jianchen frowned slightly when he heard that, and he became more and more worried. He had no idea how many years it would be when the two of them would meet again, nor did he know if Changyang, who would still treat their brotherhood and his connection with his family with importance. Brother, why don't you stop going down that path and choose another cultivation method? I can help you find a suitable, pure cultivation method. Jianchen suggested in some worry. He did not wish for his brother to change. Changyang Hu sighed gently. He said, Brother, I can't stop now. I feel like I have no other paths other than this one. And even if I don't want to proceed down this path, a mysterious force will push me along. Jianchen fell silent. He could already sense that his brother's fate seemed to have been determined by the heavens. It could no longer be changed. The two of them became rather depressed because of fate. They both subconsciously stopped talking and arrived at the city lord's estate at the same time. Brother, I heard that you let that troublemaker go. Is that true? Bai Lian asked as she clung to Jianchen's arm back at the estate. Jianchen nodded. It's because Feng Yixiao is the savior of my brother, so I let him go. Brother. Bai Lian became doubtful, but when she saw Changyang Hu beside him, she became stunned, and her small mouth immediately fell wide open. She looked up and down to examine Changyang, who as disbelief flooded her eyes. Brother Ahu, how is it you? Why are you like this? Bai Lian asked in surprise as her mouth hung agape. Yu walked in from outside as well. When she recognized that the disheveled man was Changyang Hu, she too became surprised. Changyang Hu glanced down at his tattered clothes and indifferently smiled. He said, What's wrong with this? I feel this is rather nice. Bai Lian stumbled back with what Changyang Hu had said and almost fell down. Even Yu became speechless. Jianchen could not help but laugh aloud as well. He dismissed all the worry inside him and said, Lianer, get some people to prepare some food and alcohol. I want to drink a few solid cups with my brother. Alright, I'll go get that organized immediately. Oh right, why didn't you save Great Protector Gutu, brother? Why did you only move after he had died? Bai Lian asked in curiosity. Lianer, you need to understand that my Flame Mercenaries is not an asylum, where people can seek refuge as soon as people encounter problems, and thus break free from the problems. Gutu had no good intentions for joining our mercenaries. He wanted to use the Flame Mercenaries to deal with his enemy, and after his enemy was dealt with, he would probably have left us as well. What I did today was give warning to people who think like that. Just be more careful when you accept people in the future, said Jianchen. Okay, brother. Jianchen left Flame City earlier than planned because of Changyanghu's arrival. The space gate constructed in the city, when it had been captured by the Extinguishing Alliance, was completely fixed as well. At noon on the same day, Changyanghu put on a set of new clothes and left through the space gate to return to the Changyang clan with Jianchen and Yu. The return of the first young master made Changyang Ba and Ling Long extremely excited. Ling Long, who thought about her son all day and night, had even thrown herself at Changyanghu's chest uncontrollably and burst into tears. Ever since Changyanghu had left the clan several years ago, Ling Long felt like she was living in pain every day. The words of the pavilion master of the Pure Heart Pavilion from that day rang through her head like a curse every day. She really did fear that her precious son would forget her as a mother. Chapter 1209. Exposed. After returning to the clan, Jianchen learned that Changyang Zuyingkong had already left. He went to Mercenary City all by himself and left behind a single sentence. He would not return unless he became a Saint King. Jianchen knew that what had happened in the Protector clan must have affected Changyang Zuyingkong dearly as well. He wanted to quickly increase his strength, since only Saint Kings had the right to speak before the Protector clans. Jianchen spent an entire day in the clan with his brother. 2 days had already passed since he had made the agreement to go to the Bloodsword sect in 3 days, so only 1 day remained. The morning of the next day, Jianchen convinced Yu to stay in the clan. After that, he asked Ruijin to construct a space gate to the sea before leaving all by himself. Jianchen gained his bearings above the boundless ocean before flying toward Three Saint Island as quickly as possible. Shangguan Aojian's chubby, white face constantly flickered through his head. Jianchen still felt that it was unrealistic that he suddenly had a son. Never had he thought that the heavenly enchantress would actually give birth to a child of his, and that the child would possess the innate chaotic body. At this moment, Shangguan Aojian currently sat on a white boulder on Three Saint Island. His eyes were closed, and he seemed to be amidst cultivation. Qin Qin, Xiao Qian, Xiao Yu, and the heavenly enchantress all stood right in front of him, keeping their eyes on him. Their gazes were filled with affection and unhideable concern. At this moment, Shangguan Aojian slowly opened his eyes. He could not help but wonder when he saw his 3 nervous sisters and his mother. He scratched his head and loudly asked, "Mum and sisters, why are you all staring at me?" Qin Qin, Xiao Qian, Xiao Yu, and the heavenly enchantress all became surprised when Shangguan Aojian had opened his eyes. Xiao Qian asked in shock, "Xiao Bao, you just ingested a pill refined from a 10,000-year-old heavenly resource an hour ago. Has all its medicinal effects just leaked away?" "Oh no, the effects of the pills on Xiao Bao have already begun to decline. Back then, Xiao Bao could last for half a day before all the medicinal effects leaked away completely when he ingested a 1,000-year-old heavenly resource. Yet now, a pill crafted from a 10,000-year-old heavenly resource only takes an hour. This is a pill that can allow utter cripples to undergo a metamorphosis, but it's actually completely useless to Xiao Bao. Is Xiao Bao fated to spend the rest of his life like an ordinary person?" Xiao Yu sighed. Shangguan Aojian stood up on the rock defiantly when he heard what Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu had said. With his hands on his hips, he loudly dud, "Sister Xiao Qian, Sister Xiao Yu, I'm not a cripple of cultivation. I have the most strongest innate chaotic body in the world, and the effects haven't leaked away. I've absorbed them all." With that, Xiao Bao seemed to think of something. He beamed with joy and announced, "And I have a name now. It's Shangguan Aojian." Xiao Qian, Xiao Yu, and Qin Qin all became curious. Xiao Qian said, "The most strongest innate chaotic body? Xiao Bao, what innate chaotic body? Where did you hear that from? Why have I never heard you say that before? And Master didn't seem to give you the name Shangguan Aojian." Xiao Yu pinched Shangguan Aojian's cheeks playfully. She stared at him with her bright eyes and said, "Yeah, Xiao Bao. Shangguan Aojian definitely wouldn't be a name from Master, or Master would have told us for sure. Xiao Bao's so smart. I think you gave yourself the name, right?" Xiao Qian giggled. In that case, Xiao Bao also came up with that innate chaotic body. The three women chatted around Xiao Bao. They all showed a great amount of affection toward Xiao Bao. No, it's all from Dad. Shangguan Aojian's cheeks swelled. He wanted to explain to them that the innate chaotic body was something his father told him, and that his name was from his father as well. He even wanted to tell his three sisters that he had a father. Enough, Xiao Bao, eat this 10,000-year-old ginseng. However, the heavenly enchantress covered up his mouth before he could finish what he was saying. She then pulled out an ancient ginseng from her space ring. Xiao Bao's eyes lit up when he saw the heavenly resource. He immediately forgot what he was saying and wolfed down the heavenly resource. He sat down on the rock again after consuming it and entered a state of cultivation. Although Xiao Bao had never finished what he was saying, Xiao Qian, Xiao Yu, and Qin Qin heard him mention the word dad clearly. They all became suspicious. Xiao Bao's actually just mentioned that he has a father. Have I heard wrong? Master, what is this about? Why do I feel that Xiao Bao's changed so much after your trip out with Xiao Bao, and that his name has changed for no reason? Xiao Yu asked the heavenly enchantress. She was extremely curious. The heavenly enchantress' expression became rather unnatural as the light in her eyes flickered. She became a little fearful of making eye contact with Xiao Yu, so she just turned around and said in an indifferent manner, I met a great master during the trip, and learned through luck that Xiao Bao's not a cripple, but in possession of the innate chaotic body. At the same time, the master passed on a cultivation method to him. However, his special constitution requires large amounts of heavenly resources to be consumed to create an extremely tremendous amount of energy to cultivate. Oh, really? Xiao Bao's really not a cripple? That's just fantastic. Xiao Yu and Xiao Qian both became delighted by the news. Only Qin Qin glanced past the heavenly enchantress back, and Xiao Bao's face from time to time, as the light in her eyes flickered. An hour passed very quickly, and Xiao Bao opened his eyes again, after refining the heavenly resource. He looked at the heavenly enchantress eagerly and said, Mum, more. Be a good boy, Xiao Bao. You can't eat too many heavenly resources, so that's enough for today. You can eat more tomorrow. Xiao Qian could not help but worry seeing how Shangguan Aojian wanted to eat more. Eating too many heavenly resources would leave after effects. The heavenly enchantress smiled as she looked at Xiao Bao in love. Just as she was about to pull out some more heavenly resources, her expression suddenly changed and she vanished with a flash. 10 kilometers away from the island, Jian Chun was stopped by the heavenly enchantress who had suddenly appeared. She stared at him cautiously, appearing right in front of his path to Three Saint Island. Why have you come? The heavenly enchantress showed no goodwill, as if she did not welcome Jian Chun at all. Mixed emotions flooded Jian Chun inside, as he looked at the heavenly enchantress. After learning that she had given birth to his child before, Jian Chun actually felt like he had no idea how to confront her. I've come to see my son. A while later, Jian Chun still ended up declaring his intentions. Return. Three Saint Island no longer welcomes you. The heavenly enchantress turned Jian Chun away without any second thought. She did not leave any room for discussion. Xiao Bao seemed to sense something back on Three Saint Island. He suddenly stood up from the rock and turned to face Jian Chun's direction. Although he was over 20 kilometers away, he could still clearly see Jian Chun. He immediately began to smile happily. Dad, I'm here. Although Xiao Bao had only seen Jian Chun once before, he behaved like they were extremely close. He jumped up and down on the rock and waved his hands at Jian Chun, afraid that Jian Chun would miss him. Dad, I'm here, Xiao Bao constantly called out. To everyone's surprise, his gentle voice could travel extremely far away, actually making it to over 20 kilometers, and continuing to spread even further. Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu became stunned. They stared at Xiao Bao blankly as disbelief plastered across their faces. They had clearly heard Xiao Bao call for his dad. They doubted whether they had heard correctly or not. The heavenly enchantress' expression changed as well when she heard Xiao Bao's calls. A sliver of worry flickered through her eyes. She had never thought that Xiao Bao would still be able to recognize Jian Chun from so far away. Chapter 12:10. Father and son Jian Chen's face immediately lit up in joy and excitement when he heard Xiao Bao. He immediately used the illusory flash. He took a step and hurried toward the mountain, leaving behind only an afterimage. The heavenly enchantress realized what he was doing and watched him rapidly approach the island. A struggle appeared in her eyes. She was confident that she could stop Jian Chen from reaching the island, or even stop him from getting anywhere near the island. However, that would mean that she had to fight Jian Chen. At the same time, she was unable to bring herself to stop Jian Chen. In that moment, the heavenly enchantress felt rather conflicted. Jian Chen moved very fast, traversing over 20 kilometers in an instant. While the heavenly enchantress hesitated, Jian Chen reached the island, so now it was impossible for her to stop him even if she wanted to. Dad, you finally come. I miss you so much, Xiao Bao happily exclaimed. He jumped off the rock in a nimble fashion and ran over to Jian Chen with his arms open. He said, "Huggy." A sliver of never-before-seen tender affection appeared on Jian Chen's face as he stared at Xiao Bao's chubby and extremely cute face. He picked him up in one stroke and was so excited that he was left speechless. Qin stared at Jian Chen and Xiao Bao with mixed emotions. Although she had once guessed that Xiao Bao's identity would be like this, it was only a guess. She felt a dull ache at the bottom of her heart now that it had become a reality. Jian Chen's arrival should have been something worth smiling for Qin, but the outcome was the exact opposite. Qin could not raise her spirits no matter how hard she tried, and she became depressed instead. Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu failed to notice Qin's change. They had been stunned by what Xiao Bao had said as they stared, who he was calling Jian Chen dad so affectionately. All their thoughts had stopped. Only a long while later did Xiao Qian finally return to her senses. She would never have believed that Jian Chen was Xiao Bao's father. She thought Xiao Bao had called him the wrong name, so she quickly corrected him. "Xiao Bao, you should call Master Jian Chen brother or uncle and not dad. You can't use dad so casually." Xiao Bao clung tightly onto Jian Chen's neck. He felt like his father's bosom was even more comfortable than his mother's, as if his father had something that his mother lacked. "You're lying. He's clearly my dad, so I'm not going to call him big brother or uncle. I'm only going to call him dad. Only dad." Xiao Bao pouted and unhappily replied to Xiao Qian. At this moment, Xiao Yu returned to her senses as well. She glanced past Jian Chen and Xiao Bao's faces and slowly became surprised. She said, "Xiao Qian, why do I feel like Xiao Bao and Master Jian Chen's appearances are similar in some areas?" With that, Xiao Qian immediately looked closer. Now that the two of them were together, she had indeed found them to be rather similar after comparing their appearances. Xiao Qian immediately became astounded. "Xiao Yu, now that you mention it, I feel like they just look far too similar as well. If it weren't for the fact that I know Xiao Bao's origins, I would suspect." Reaching there, Xiao Qian suddenly felt that there was something wrong. The two of them had heard about Xiao Bao's origins from their master, and had no idea that Xiao Bao's true identity was different from what the heavenly enchantress had told them. Now that Xiao Bao constantly called Jian Chen dad, after seeing him, and the fact that the two of them looked far too similar, just like father and son, she immediately sensed that something was wrong. Sister Xiao Qian, Sister Xiao Yu, you're actually working with Mum to trick me, telling me that I have no dad. I actually do have a dad. I've already found my dad," Xiao Bao said in irritation. Through his childish voice, his unhappiness for Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu was clearly disclosed. Even his arms around Jian Chen's neck tightened. "Xiao Bao, is it really true? Is Master Jian Chen really?" Xiao Yu covered her mouth as she stared at Xiao Bao and Jian Chen with widening eyes. Disbelief was spelt across her face as her heart churned. Xiao Bao's not a liar, and Dad has already given me a new name. It's Shangguan Aojian," Xiao Bao confidently replied. Impossible. That can't be true." Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu both became shocked. They refused to believe that Xiao Bao's father was Jian Chen. Who was his mother then? However, they already had an answer in their heads, because of the way their master treated Xiao Bao, as well as the fact that the heavenly enchantress gaze toward him would be filled with motherly love. They just refused to believe it. The heavenly enchantress returned to the island. She glanced over Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu with her enchanting eyes and sighed inside. She could already tell that Xiao Bao's true identity had been exposed from their expressions. Master, Xiao Bao's origins. Xiao Qian continued to look at the heavenly enchantress in disbelief in attempt to obtain an answer. The heavenly enchantress' gaze flickered and avoided them. At this moment, she was actually unwilling to meet her three disciples' eyes. She seemed very calm on the surface, but she was a complete mess down below. Xiao Qian, Xiao Yu Qin, you are dismissed, the heavenly enchantress said coldly and emotionlessly. Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu both became wide-eyed. Although they never finished asking, their meaning was obviously conveyed very clearly. However, what really surprised them was that not only did their master avoid the topic, she was avoiding them as well. They had been with their master for many years, but this was the first time they had ever seen her like that. Senior Xiao Qian, Senior Xiao Yu, let's go. Qin went up to grab Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu's hands, pulling them away with her. Although the matter had never been confirmed, they already knew the answer inside. They just refused to believe it. The three of them vanished very quickly. The heavenly enchantress then coldly looked at Jian. With a slight bit of anger in her eyes, she said, "What are you doing here?" At this moment, the heavenly enchantress was indeed extremely annoyed. Jian's arrival was without warning, and had actually exposed Xiao Bao's identity to her three disciples. She no longer knew how to face them in the future. I've obviously come to see my son. As a father, I have the responsibility to care for my child, smiled Jian. He did not mind the heavenly enchantress' attitude at all. Dad, just stay here in the future. You can be with Mum every day, and I can see you every day as well, Xiao Bao said. His face was basically pressed against Jian's while his hot breath tickled Jian's cheek. Jian felt deeply moved by Xiao Bao's eyes, which were brimming in hope. At that moment, he actually felt like he could not turn down Xiao Bao's request, tempted to just agree to it. After all, he had only learned he had a son when Xiao Bao was already 3 years old. He had never shown any love to Xiao Bao in the past, and did not even know he had a son at all. He felt sorry for not knowing about Xiao Bao. However, Jian had his reasons. He knew he could not, well, at the very least, not right now. Xiao Bao, I can't spend every day with you right now because I have a lot of important things to attend to. However, I can promise you that once I deal with everything, I'll spend every day with you. All right? Jian gently replied with eyes filled with love. All right, then I'll wait for you with Mum. Hey you. Yeah you. Another survey. Chapter 12:11. Newbies emerges. Jian had come to Three Saint Island this time to visit Xiao Bao, as well as deliver some cultivation resources to him. Xiao Bao was in possession of the innate chaotic body, so the resources he required were just as extravagant as what Jian needed. When Jian first began cultivating the chaotic body, he had the assistance of the sword spirits. They could refine ruler armaments into pure strands of chaotic force for him to absorb, and pave the path of cultivation for him, allowing him to advance quickly. However, Xiao Bao was just too young even though he had the innate chaotic body. At the same time, he did not have sword spirits that could refine ruler armaments for him into chaotic force, so he could only use various resources like heavenly resources. Jian never considered cultivation, through absorbing the energy of the world. Chaotic force was different from ordinary energies. Refining a single strand would require tremendous amounts of energy. If he wanted to continue by absorbing energy of the world, he would advance extremely slowly even if it was 100 times more abundant in this world. Back then, Jian had broken through to the first layer of the chaotic body by absorbing the energy that Xiaoling had gathered after 100,000 years. Although all the energy was casually collected by Xiaoling, and not due to a certain method, it was still enough to give an idea of just how much energy Jian had consumed to reach the first layer. In order for Xiao Bao to properly begin cultivating, Jian pulled out 2 Class 9 monster cores, 10 Class 8 monster cores, and the other Class 7, 6, and 5 monster cores he had obtained from the Heaven's Incense School from his space ring. He also took out all the heavenly resources in his space ring. Jian's space ring had suddenly become half empty after removing all those items, but he did not feel pained at all. Class 9 monster cores. You actually have Class 9 monster cores. Even the heavenly enchantress involuntarily made an outburst when she saw the monster cores. Class 9 monster cores could only appear within the bodies of Class 9 magical beasts that had reached the level of Saint Emperors. Even the remains of Saint Emperors could not match their value. They were basically items of legends on the Tianyuan continent. Even with the heavenly enchantress' mental fortitude, she could not help but have a different expression when he pulled out 2 Class 9 monster cores in one stroke. What made the heavenly enchantress even more astounded was other than the 2 Class 9 monster cores, he had 10 Class 8 monster cores as well. Class 8 monster cores were basically non-existent on the continent, just like Class 9 monster cores, where it was basically impossible to come across any. The heavenly enchantress began to suspect whether Jian Chun had robbed a protector clan when he pulled out so many monster cores in one stroke. This was because no organization could pull out so many high-class monster cores other than the 10 protector clans and mercenary city. Xiao Bao will consume extremely vast amounts of energy when he cultivates. These items should be enough to support him for a period of time. I'll pass them all to you, and I'll have to trouble you with looking after him. Jian Chen stored all the items into another space ring and passed it to the heavenly enchantress. He obviously would not give all these valuable items to Xiao Bao. He was still a child after all, and it would be a huge loss if he lost them. The heavenly enchantress did not turn down the space ring. She accepted it without saying anything more. Ever since Xiao Bao had obtained a cultivation method of the chaotic body from the sword spirits, she had witnessed the rate at which he consumed the heavenly resources. A 10,000-year-old heavenly resource would only take him an hour to fully absorb. The speed was terrifyingly fast. And after consuming so many 10,000-year-old heavenly resources, Xiao Bao did not undergo any significant changes. His dantian was still devoid of energy, which was more than enough to demonstrate just how vast the energy needed for the chaotic body was. The toughness of the chaotic body is nowhere near ordinary. Xiao Bao is in possession of the innate chaotic body, so he has some natural advantages. He will not suffer from any backlashes when consuming heavenly resources or refining monster cores, so you have no need to worry about Xiao Bao consuming heavenly resources and monster cores too quickly. Jian Chen explained more about the chaotic body to the heavenly enchantress, allowing her to have a rough understanding of Xiao Bao's constitution. Then when can Xiao Bao cultivate the chaotic force that you've mentioned? The heavenly enchantress asked. Although she was extremely unwilling to talk to Jian Chen, she still cared very much for her child. She needed to understand the chaotic force for her son. You need to forge and refine the chaotic body before cultivating chaotic force. Xiao Bao is still at the stage of forging, so all the energy will be absorbed by his body. After he completes this process, he will finally be able to cultivate chaotic force. You don't understand the chaotic body very much, so don't interfere with Xiao Bao's cultivation. He already has the cultivation method, so as long as he follows it, everything will obviously flow naturally, said Jian Chen. Jian Chen stayed on the island for most of the day before leaving. During that time, he basically explained everything regarding the constitution to Xiao Bao, and also told him about his experiences and all his knowledge regarding cultivation he had gained over the years. Once Jian Chen left the island and stood above the sea, did he realize that he did not bring a Saint King with him. Without a Saint King, there would be no space gate, and he was over 10 million kilometers away from the Jessen Kingdom right now. If he flew, it would take him at least 10 days or half a month to get back. Do I have to go back and ask the heavenly enchantress to construct a space gate for me? Jian Chen frowned. He was troubled. There were some slight discrepancies in his relationship with the heavenly enchantress, so he really could not bring himself to return to ask her to send him back home. Jian Chen helplessly sighed as he stared at the boundless ocean. Just when he had no idea what he should do, the artifact spirit's voice rang through his head. His face immediately lit up in joy, and without any hesitation, he disappeared into the artifact space. Boom! Before Jian Chen could even make out his surroundings, he heard a deafening rumble. At the same time, A vast pressure that originated from the surroundings filled the space. A Saint-tier battle skill. Jianchen shivered inside. He immediately understood that someone was using a Saint-tier battle skill from the vast pressure, and that the user was powerful as well, at least a Saint King. Master, your friend who has always been studying the Saint-tier battle skill has emerged from seclusion. The artifact spirit appeared silently beside Jianchen and politely informed him. As expected, a person shining with a golden, blinding light could be seen 1,000 meters away in the air. Above him, a serpent-like dragon swam about. Although the dragon was condensed from energy, it too shone with golden light and possessed a vast pressure. At this moment, the dragon roared at the sky before turning into a golden blur. It charged toward the ground at an unbelievable speed. Boom! With another rumble, the ground shook violently. Huge cracks littered the surroundings in 100 kilometers radius, while a 100-meter wide, bottomless hole appeared there. The golden dragon did not dissipate after producing such a shocking strike. It flew back as a golden streak of light, returning above the person's head. Ha 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 ha, the great newbies have finally succeeded. A crazy laugh rang through the surroundings and spread out in all directions. Even from 1,000 kilometers away, Jianchen could clearly hear the arrogant and joyful voice. Hey you. Yeah you. Another survey. Chapter 12:12. Visiting the Bloodsword sect. Jianchen could not help but smile. He was filled with joy inside as well. He had never thought that newbies, who had been locked up for several years, and had been devoting all his time to studying a Saint-tier battle skill, would finally come out at this moment, and that he would have modified the Saint-tier battle skill into one that he could use himself. Jianchen was happy for newbie's success. The pressure that permeated the surroundings shocked him in particular. Although he had not personally experienced a strike from the modified Saint-tier battle skill, he could tell from the presence alone that the battle skill was not weaker than an attack from a 7th heavenly layer Saint King. The huge golden dragon above newbies began to revolve quickly again. Pulses of energy rippled out as the pressure in the surroundings began to gradually increase. Jianchen knew that newbies had not finished casting the skill when he felt this. Newbies was about to direct it toward the ground again. If Jianchen was outside, he obviously would not do anything about it. But the artifact space was his territory. He did not wish for it to become a mess because of newbies, so he hurriedly yelled, "Newbies, stop! If you want to try the Saint-tier battle skill, go outside. Don't do it here." Ha 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 ha, Jianchen. I, the great newbies, have finally succeeded in modifying that Saint-tier battle skill for the sea race into one that's specific to me. This Saint-tier battle skill has been modified according to myself, so no other human or magical beast can use it other than silver-striped golden snakes. Jianchen, taste the power of the Saint-tier battle skill. Newbies laughed aloud. He was extremely excited and proud. With that, the dragon above his head roared and shot toward Jianchen like a golden streak of lightning. Jianchen became stern. Newbies was a 3rd heavenly layer Saint King, so Jianchen actually felt pressured facing a battle skill from him. Not only had the golden dragon locked onto Jianchen's presence, preventing him from dodging, even the space around him became thick. Not only did he feel like he was standing in treacle, a heavy pressure was also pressing against him from all directions, as if a huge mountain lay above him. His mobility was greatly limited. Jianchen's indifferent gaze became sharp in that moment. A great battle intent began to radiate from him. Although Jianchen did not fear newbie's Saint-tier battle skill, he was still cautious. Strands of chaotic force surged within him, quickly fusing into every inch of his flesh. Jianchen used everything that his chaotic force could provide, forcefully pushing back the space around him by 3 inches. The Emperor armament had already appeared silently in his right hand. Violent and destructive chaotic force swirled around the sword. All that was left where Jianchen had been standing was an afterimage now. He advanced instead of retreating, charging toward the golden dragon with an unstoppable force. Bang! With a great sound, Jianchen collided with the golden dragon. A terrifying ripple of energy erupted in the form of a golden storm into the surroundings, dyeing the entire place a golden dazzling light. The space at the center of the golden world violently trembled. It had turned into a blurry mess there. Even though the artifact's space was much tougher than the outside world, it still ended up ripping open from their attacks. The golden energy slowly receded after a long while. Jianchen stood upright where the golden dragon was before. His clothes had become rather messy and even slightly tattered, but his complexion remained the same, just as composed as before. The soul beneath him had already disappeared, now replaced by a 100-meter-wide ditch. He levitated in the air. Meanwhile, Newbie's golden dragon had vanished. 1,000 meters away in the air, Newbies blinked a few times and looked at Jianchen in disbelief. He cried out, "How could that happen? My Saint Tier battle skill was already at the level of 7th Heavenly Layer Saint Kings, and even a Saint King at that level would need to exert quite the effort to defend against it. How did break through it so easily? Jianchen, what's your strength right now? Have you reached the 8th Heavenly Layer already?" Jianchen put the Emperor armament away. He did not care about his clothes at all. He took a step and arriving by Newbie's side instantly, he chuckled. "My strength is the same as yours, at the 3rd Heavenly Layer, but if I borrow the Emperor armament and use all I have, I should be able to display strength at the peak of the 7th Heavenly Layer. I understand the Saint Tier battle skill I've modified extremely well. It needs a sliver of my essence to cast it, so its strength is incomparable to ordinary Saint Tier battle skills. Even if your battle prowess is at the peak of the 7th Heavenly Layer, it's impossible for you to block my Saint Tier battle skill so easily." Newbies pursued the matter. He still refused to believe that Jianchen's strength was at what he had said. Jianchen thought about it and added, "Maybe it's because of my chaotic force." Newbies gave a deep nod with that. He said, "The energy you use is weird. Looks like that's really the cause. Alright, let's not talk about this for now. Let's go out first. I just happen to have some problems I need your help with," said Jianchen. Newbie's eyes lit up with that. "I never thought that I'd have to fight right after I get out. Let's hurry. I just happen to be in need of someone to try my Saint Tier battle skill on." Jianchen shook his head speechlessly. Newbie sure was a battle freak to have thought that his problem was a powerful enemy. However, he did not give an explanation. He just left the artifact space with Newbies. Newbies looked around after he got out. Other than a small island in the distance, there was just the boundless ocean. "Jianchen, didn't you say you encountered some problems? Why don't I see any enemies?" Newbies asked in confusion. He constantly looked around in search of something. Jianchen rolled his eyes at Newbies. "I think you've become confused after so many years of seclusion. My problem is something else, not a powerful enemy." "What's your problem then?" Newbies asked reflexively. He then looked toward the island far away, and immediately understood something. "I get it, Jianchen. Let me guess. Does your problem have to do with the Heavenly Enchantress?" Before Jianchen could reply, Newbies continued as if that really was the case. "You don't need to reply anymore. I already know that that's the case. Humph. To think that I was so afraid of that woman, when I was still a saint ruler. That's the greatest embarrassment in my entire life. But who made her specialize in soul attacks? And who made magical beasts have a weak soul? Too bad that my strength has skyrocketed. My soul had been refined as well when I modified the Saint Tier battle skill. Both my strength and the power of my soul are no longer comparable to before. So I have no need to fear even if I have to face up against the Heavenly Enchantress, who's skilled in soul attacks." Newbies could not help but feel bold. When he spoke to that point. He said, "Let's go, Jianchen. Let's go to 3 Saint Island. Allow me, the great Newbies, to witness the soul attacks of the Heavenly Enchantress and regain the honor that I had lost back then." Newbies was about to fly toward 3 Saint Island when he said that. Jianchen's heart jumped. He knew extremely well that it would be no different than seeking death if Newbies went to the island right now. He was not the Heavenly Enchantress opponent back then, and was even less of an opponent now. Jianchen grabbed Newbies' arm hurriedly and forcefully stopped him. He sternly said, "Newbies, don't blame me for not warning you. The Heavenly Enchantress' strength right now is incomparable to the past. I think she's already reached the 9th Heavenly Layer of Saint King, and her zither attacks are even more terrifying. Jianchen could not help but think back to when the heavenly enchantress had knocked out countless experts of the protector Changyang clan with a single note. He was also certain that the heavenly enchantress had only played the zither casually. If she had used all she had, even Saint Kings would not have been able to resist the terrifying charm hidden within the notes. What? She's already reached the 9th heavenly layer? Newbies jumped in fright. He stared at Jianchen in disbelief. A few days ago, she played a note casually, and it led to the collapse of a powerful protector clan. Are you still certain you want to do that? Jianchen said. Newbies could not help but retract his head in fright as he looked at the island in fear. He was no longer bold enough to proceed with what he was going to do. Magical beasts possessed an innate advantage of a powerful body, such that their battle prowess exceeded humans at the same level. However, they were not without weaknesses either, and one of these weaknesses was the soul. As a result, Newbies was more willing to fight against powerful humans than those who could use soul attacks. Newbies, I may have the battle prowess of a Saint King, but my comprehension of the mysteries of the world remains at the 9th heavenly layer of Saint Ruler, so I can't rip open a space gate. I want to return to the Jessen Kingdom immediately, so just make a space gate for me. Only now did Newbies understand. Jianchen's problem was not something he had thought of. Instead, it was the fact that he did not have the ability to construct a space gate to return home. Newbies was no longer willing to stay a moment later after learning how terrifying the heavenly enchantress was. He immediately created a space gate as quickly as he could, leaving with Jianchen. Jianchen and Newbies returned to the Jessen Kingdom together, before summoning the 4 protectors of the Bloodsword sect. They directly proceeded to the Bloodsword sect, under the lead of the 4 protectors. Rui Jin, He Yu and Hong Lian stayed in the clan. They did not go with him, but they had already left a method of communication with Jianchen. As soon as Jianchen encountered an opponent he could not defeat, the 3 of them would hurry over as soon as they could. Yi did not go along either. Instead, she stayed in the Bright Moon Divine Hall to cultivate, working hard on increasing her own strength. She knew that she could only help Jianchen with even more things once she was strong. Heyu, Yeyu. Another survey. Chapter 12-13. Return of the Bloodsword sect. Jianchen was only accompanied by the 3rd heavenly layer Saint King Newbies on his journey to the Bloodsword sect this time. Originally, they could have opened a space gate and arrived at the Bloodsword sect through it. But unfortunately, neither Jianchen nor Newbies knew the exact location of the sect, nor did they ever visit the place, so they did not know the exact location. As a result, they could only use the description from the 4 protectors to create a space gate several 100,000 kilometers away and fly the rest of the journey. Jianchen and Newbies flew for an entire day and night under the lead of the 4 protectors before finally arriving where the Bloodsword sect was located. To their surprise, the Bloodsword sect was hidden in a small and extremely obscure valley within a huge, desolate mountain range. From the looks of it, the valley seemed rather similar to Longevity Valley, where Uncle Xiao stayed. A village was present in the valley as well, except it was even more obscure than Longevity Valley. It was large as well, possessing over 2,000 wooden huts in a neat fashion. All of the huts were ordered in a pattern, but they varied in sizes. The huts at the edge were the smallest, and the closer to the center, the larger they became. A hall constructed from 10,000-year-old ironwood stood at the center. It contained 7 floors and took up several tens of thousands square meters. A dead silence loomed over the entire village when Jianchen and Newbies saw it. There was not a single person there, nor was there any farmland in the surroundings. It could have been easily misunderstood as a ghost town. However, that was not what Jianchen and Newbies believed. They had already sensed several powerful presences in the silent village, and the most powerful one had already reached Saint Emperor. Is this where the Bloodsword sect is located? Jianchen asked as he looked at the village. Sect Master, this is indeed where we are located. The disciples of the sect basically all stay in the huts to cultivate, and they don't usually come out unless there's something happening. It's very common for not a single person to emerge in half a month, explained a protector. I, the great Newbies, can tell that there are only 2,000 people in total with just a single glance. The Bloodsword sect is one of the 3 great assassination organizations on the continent after all. They may have declined, but isn't there just too few people? Newbies curled his lips scornfully. His impression of the Bloodsword sect immediately plummeted. Our sect has not declined. We've only gone into seclusion under the sect master's orders, and never appear on the Tianyuan continent. We may have suffered heavy casualties from the battle 1,000 years ago, but we've recovered already after 1,000 years of recuperation. All the people here are the core disciples of our sect. All of them are elites. We have several tens of thousand other disciples outside, scattered and hidden across the entire continent, a protector explained emotionlessly. At this moment, a few people in red clothes flew over from the village, arriving before Jianchen in just a few seconds. There were a total of 6 people. The leading person was an ordinary old man, who seemed to be in his 70s. His vast presence allowed Jianchen and newbies to tell that he was a saint king with a single glance, and that he was the same as newbies, at the 3rd heavenly layer. 2 people behind him were middle-aged men, while the other 3 were all old people. They were all at the 7th heavenly layer saint rulers at a minimum, and 2 of them were at the 9th heavenly layer. The vice sect master Jiang Wang and the 5 elders have come to greet the sect master. The old man at the very front gave a clear greeting and bowed toward Jianchen. He had learned that Jianchen had become the sect master long ago, and was extremely familiar with Jianchen. Jianchen could tell that the vice sect master and the 5 elders were completely content with him taking up the position as sect master from their expressions. Jianchen stepped up to help Jiang Wang rise and said, "There's no need to be so polite. I was fortunate enough to be favored by Uncle Xiu, which was why he passed the position as sect master to me, allowing me to take up the important matter of developing the Bloodsword sect. If there's anything that I do incorrectly in the future, please show me how it's done, Vice Sect Master." The sect master is too modest. Within the sect master possesses supreme authority. How could I correct you? Jianchen and Jiang Wang conversed politely out of courtesy, before being invited into the village by Jiang Wang. The 5 elders and 4 protectors followed silently behind them. Sect Master, all the people here are the core disciples of the sect. There are around 2,300 total, and the weakest are Earth Saint Masters. There are around 220 Heaven Saint Masters, and 9 Saint Rulers in total, which would be the 4 protectors and the 5 elders. As for the Saint Kings, there is only me. Where we stay contains a powerful killing formation as well, formed from over 2,000 wooden huts. The control center for the formation would be the Blood God Hall in the very center, which is also the residence of the sect master. Other than the vice sect master, everyone else can only enter the place after receiving the approval of the sect master. Along the way, Jiang Wang constantly explained the situation of the Bloodsword sect to Jianchen. He began from where they stayed before moving on to the outer disciples that were scattered outside, allowing Jianchen to gain a clear understanding of the structure of the sect in the end. The structure was not complicated at all. In fact, it was extremely simple. The entire organization was controlled by the 5 elders. They all managed their own squadron of people. The vice sect master, on the other hand, possessed complete authority over the 5 elders, while the sect master was an absolute existence in the sect. They could decide everything and anything for the sect. The next day, Jianchen underwent the formal ceremony of taking up the position as sect master. The ceremony was very simple. It was hosted by the vice sect master, elders, and protectors, allowing all the core members to pay respects to the sect master. The first thing that Jianchen did was hold a meeting after the ceremony. Currently, Jianchen newbies, Jiang Wang, the 5 elders, and the 4 protectors gathered in a room enveloped by a barrier in the Blood God Hall. They all were stern. Jianchen had changed into the special attire of the sect master. He wore blood-red luxurious robes, which added a sense of maliciousness to his appearance. Today, I have 2 important matters to announce in this meeting. The first thing is that the Bloodsword sect will return to the continent again, Jianchen sternly informed them. He rarely issued orders, But his words were filled with absolute authority. Jiang Wang, the elders, and the protectors all lit up in joy, but no one said anything in response. Jianchen continued. The next matter will be wiping out the underworld sect. If the first matter had delighted the upper echelon of the Bloodsword sect, the second made them all ecstatic. In all these years, the three great assassination organizations had always been in conflict with one another. Countless smaller clashes had occurred in the past, and their enmity had already reached an irreconcilable stage, especially when the Bloodsword sect waged a war that was unheard of against the Underworld sect and the Yamahal. Back then, Houston's strength was absolute, and neither one of the two organizations were the opponent of the Bloodsword sect. In the end, the two organizations worked together, allowing them to face the Bloodsword sect in a life-or-death battle. The battle was extremely intense. Although the two organizations worked together, Houston's strength was still supreme, and the Bloodsword sect was unstoppable. Under his lead, the Bloodsword sect still managed to suppress the two other organizations, pushing them toward the brink of destruction. In the end, the battle only stopped after Houston's wife was assassinated, and from then on, the Bloodsword sect vanished from the Tianyuan continent. During the 1,000 years, the entire sect had wanted to take revenge against the two assassination organizations several times, but they could do nothing due to the sect master's orders, much less appear on the continent, which was why they withheld their enmity for a whole millennia. Now that the new sect master had finally released them from that order, they were all ravished with joy. Sect master, when will we be moving out? An elder stood up and excitedly asked. Since the order has been issued, the sooner we move the better. I hope we can finish off Uncle Xiu's revenge as soon as possible. Do you know where the Underworld sect is located? Jianchen asked. Sect master, the Underworld sect is well hidden, but it is not hidden well enough to hide from the intelligence hall of the Bloodsword sect. We've looked into this before. All we need is an order from the sect master, and then we can set off immediately, replied Jiang Wang. He had yearned for this day for a very long time already. If that's the case, let's set out tomorrow morning. Go make preparations today. We will be in an intense battle tomorrow, Jianchen heavily informed them. Sect master, how many people will we be bringing? An elder asked. Vice sect master, elders and protectors, you will be coming with me. There is no need to bring the people below Saint Ruler. But sect master, the Underworld sect has a divine hall. They've always been hiding in it in the recent years, so we might not be able to break through the divine hall with our sect's strength, said an elder. You don't need to worry about this. Divine halls are tough, but they are not indestructible. Jianchen's voice was filled with confidence, but he sighed inside. By the looks of things, he needed to trouble Rui Jin and the others when he moved against the Underworld sect. Hey you, yeah you, another survey. Chapter 12:14. The president sighs as one of the 7 capital cities on the continent. The city of God was bustling. Most of the people who strolled through the streets were rich merchants and the descendants of exceptional clans. Only once in a while would a few rough-looking mercenaries appear in the crowd. Not only was the city of God the territory of one of the 3 great clans that controlled the entire empire, the Tsar family, it was also the sanctuary of Radiant Saint Masters. Not only did most of the Radiant Saint Masters on the continent gather here, it was where all Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters lived. There were over 20 known Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters on the continent, and all of them had been bestowed a position as an elder of the Radiant Saint Master Union. A majestic castle stood quietly in the center of the city, like a sleeping beast. It possessed a feeling like it had stood through many changes. The castle was snow-white, but it was aged, so it was not particularly bright in color. Traces of time were present on it. This castle was the headquarters of the Radiant Saint Master Union. On the 7th floor, the president Adami currently sat quietly on a throne in a beautifully adorned hall. His face was no longer as bright as before, now possessing traces of haggardness. Even his wrinkles had deepened, making him seem even older. Esteemed President, Yilan wishes to see you. At this moment, a polite voice came from outside. Sir, please come in, Adami gently replied. With a gentle wave of his right hand, a ball of milky white light flashed from it, and the door opened silently. A man in tight-fitting robes walked in from outside. He only seemed to be in his early 30s since his dark eyes shone with vigor, like two pieces of obsidian. His handsome face possessed the weathering of wind and rain. Esteemed President, I've led a group of people outside under your orders to find Master Yun Tian, but there hasn't been any news of him even now. The young man clasped his hands at the president. Adami frowned in thought. Yun Tian's already vanished for so many years. I really do wonder where he's gone. I've used a secret technique many times, but I still haven't been able to communicate with him. Has Yun Tian suffered an accident? The president darkened when he thought of that possibility. Yun Tian was his senior disciple. He had basically watched him grow up. So although they were just master and disciple, Adami had treated him as his own son. As a result, Adami felt rather sorrowful when he thought about how Yun Tian may have suffered an accident. Yilan, it's been tiring for you over the past few days. Go rest first. You don't need to search for Yun Tian anymore. Adami waved his hand gently. He was rather dispirited. President, you must look after yourself. I shall bid farewell, Yilan said in concern before backing out quietly. Sigh. With Yilan's departure, Adami sat back and leaned against the wide and comfortable throne. At this moment, Adami could not help but think about some matters of the past. In his life, he had taken on 3 disciples in total. The first one had departed long ago, due to old age, while the second one was Yun Tian, who he had watched grow up. As for his third disciple, it was something that he felt most prideful about. Both his first and second disciples were exceptional. They possessed an extremely great talent among radiant saint masters. But compared to his third disciple, the difference was just unsurmountable, because not only was his third disciple a Class 7, radiant saint master, he was also a supreme expert that could shake up the continent. His achievements as a fighter had already surpassed his abilities as a radiant saint master, already a famous saint king, who even the 10 protector clans feared. Unfortunately, accidents occurred. The third disciple that Adami felt most pride for ended up taking away the saint artifact of the Union, almost causing the Union to collapse. Not only did it result in an irreversible loss, it also cut Adami off from the possibility of becoming a Class 8, Radiant Saint Master. Adami was nearing the end of his life. He originally had a total of 3,000 years, and he gained another 200 years through a 10,000-year-old heavenly resource. So he had 3,200 years in total. Over 3,100 years had already passed, so he only had a few decades left. Adami had never married in his life, and he was without children. He only had a few wishes as he neared his death. One was to see the Union become even more powerful, and even more glorious, if he could not become a Class 8, Radiant Saint Master, while the other was being sent off by his closest disciples. However, his final wishes had all become dreams now, let alone becoming even more powerful and even more glorious. It was extremely fortunate that the Union had not collapsed. Being sent off by his closest disciples was even more impossible. His second disciple had been missing for many years, and no one knew whether he was still alive or not right now, while his third disciple's status was far from what it had been in the past. Even as the president of the Union, he could not form proper ties with him, let alone be sent off by him. I've worked hard my entire life for the glory of the Union. I never thought that I would fail to see glory after over 2,000 years of work, and that the Union would collapse in my hands. I am the offender of the Union. The president sighed at the sky. His voice trembled slightly, and was filled with dreariness. Tears even pooled in his eyes. A tiny wooden hut stood all by itself on the peak of a mountain 10,000 kilometers from the city. Zarkayun remained on the bed, eyes closed within the hut. She had been unconscious for many years already, and had still not woken up. Kayan, do you still remember when we first met each other in the City of God? Back then, I was only an Earth Saint Master, and I had been chased into the city by a villain. I was very heavily injured and my space ring had been stolen as well. I had nothing. I was hungry and thirsty. With no other choice, I stole a set of clean clothes from a small household before dragging my exhausted body to an inn where I had a hearty meal. In the end, when I received the bill, I was completely ready to be beaten black and blue, but you suddenly appeared in that crucial moment. Back then, you were so pretty as a fairy from heaven. I was deeply drawn in at first glance. Back then, I still didn't know who you were. Not only did you help me pay off my bill, you even noticed that I was very heavily injured with a single glance. You gave me an invaluable Class 6 Radiant Spirit pill and spoke with me for a long time. From that time on, I had become your friend. I still remember when you found out that I had been hunted down by a villain. You fell into an utter rage, which we then went together to find him. We killed him by working together. Hao Wu held Zart Sayun's hand as he gently recalled their first meeting. Reminiscence filled his eyes. In all the years Zar Kaiyun had been unconscious, he had stayed there, having not left for even a single moment. Kaiyun, do you still remember our promise back then? You said that once we're strong enough, we'll live a life as wanderers and travel across the continent. Kaiyun, wake up. Let's go fulfill that promise. On a lone island several million kilometers away from the Tianyuan continent in the vast sea, a disheveled man in tattered clothes currently crouched down as he wolfed down a fish in his hands. I'll eat you. I'll eat you. Yes, yes. I'll eat you, Yang Yutian. I'll be eating you, eating your flesh and drinking your blood. Ha 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 ha, isn't it very painful? Cry out, cry out. Keep crying out, keep struggling. No matter how you struggle before I, Master Yun Tian, you will still become my prey in the end. The beggar-like person mumbled mindlessly as he gnawed the fish in his hands, laughing idiotically from time to time. With a plop, the water near the shore splashed, and a 60-centimeter fish accidentally leaped ashore. It struggled furiously in an attempt to return to the water. The man's eyes immediately lit up. He tossed away the half-eaten fish and cried out at the same time, Yang Yutian, don't run away. As he said that, he lunged forward, pressing the fish that was just about to return to the water into the ground. The lower half of his face smashed into the rock underneath, causing him to bleed from his nose and mouth. However, he did not seem to be in pain. He spat out a mouthful of blood and 2 broken teeth as he laughed in a deranged fashion. I caught you, Yang Yutian. Let's see how you run now. In front of me, you can't escape no matter how great you are. I want to eat your flesh and drink your blood. He used his hands to grab the fish under him. The fish immediately began to struggle desperately, rapidly opening and closing its mouth. Yun Tian became even more excited when he saw this. He laughed aloud. Yang Yutian, never did you think that you would end up like this. Struggle desperately. Call out miserably. Go on, do it. Plead for your life. Plead me to spare your life. I might just spare your life. Yang Yutian, why aren't you saying anything? Why aren't you pleading? Talk, go on, talk. Okay, Yang Yutian, you're not going to talk. Since you're not going to talk, don't blame me. I'll bite you to death. As he said that, Yun Tian opened his bloodied mouth to viciously bite the fish. His 2 broken teeth could clearly be seen. Hey you. Yeah you. Another survey. Chapter 12-15. Wiping out the Underworld Sect. 1. When the Beast God continent had launched a large-scale invasion of the Tianyuan continent because of the Winged Tiger God, they were obstructed by the experts of the Tianyuan continent before an agreement was reached. Thus, the experts all temporarily settled down on an island. Afterward, Yun Tian left the Union and the continent with news regarding the Winged Tiger God, wanting to find the experts to tell them that the Winged Tiger God was with Jian Shen, and, hence, cause problems for him. However, Yun Tian fainted from exhaustion after flying for a few days. Just as he was about to drown, a magical beast happened to pass by. The magical beast scooped him from the water and brought him to the island. After learning about the Winged Tiger God from Yun Tian, the experts of the Beast God continent set off for the Tianyuan continent again while Yun Tian was left on the island. Yun Tian was unable to make the journey because the island was extremely far away from the continent. He had no idea in which direction to travel, and he was not strong enough for the journey, so he ended up trapped there. At the very beginning, Yun Tian was still able to keep his sanity, but after quite some time, he could no longer bear it, and was eventually reduced to his current shape. Jian Chun led the vice sect master, the 5 elders, and the 4 protectors the morning of the next day. They headed to where the underworld sect was located. Newbies obviously followed along as well. Jiang Wang had searched for the exact hiding location of the underworld sect himself, so he had left down marks from back then. They arrived where the underworld sect was located through a space gate created by the vice sect master. It was located in a yellow world, sand as far as the eye could see. The burning sun hung high in the air and radiated with an intense heat, baking the earth until it was scorching hot. Jian Chun, newbies, Jiang Wang, the 5 elders, and the 4 protectors all levitated in the sky at ease. They gazed at the ground from above. The severe conditions of the desert did not affect them at all. Sect Master, in order to prevent the experts of the underworld sect from sensing us, I've chosen to construct the space gate 1,000 kilometers away. There's a region of loose sand up ahead. The divine hall of the underworld sect is hidden beneath the loose sand, Jiang Wang explained to Jian Chun. Jian Chun immediately looked ahead and nodded slightly. He said, "Let's go." With that, the group set off. The weakest among them were the 4 protectors, who were saint rulers at the 5th heavenly layer, so all of them possessed a rather deep comprehension of space. As a result, they moved extremely quickly, crossing 1,000 kilometers in less than 5 minutes. Jian Chun immediately extended his presence into the ground when he arrived above the region of loose sand. Indeed, he discovered a huge divine hall standing silently underneath the sand. Jian Chun's eyes grew cold. Of the 2 organizations that had murdered Uncle Xiu's wife all those years ago, the Yama Hall had already been devastated by him. All that was left was the underworld sect. Jian Chun did not hesitate. A powerful killing intent surged out of him into the surroundings, while the Emperor armament silently appeared in his hand. A dark mist coiled around the weapon, giving off the violent presence of destruction. Jiang Wang and the 5 elders shivered inside. Jian Chun's killing intent was enough to make them tremble in fear, allowing them to finally witness Jian Chun's strength. All of them sighed. The rumors were true. Although they had heard about Jian Chun's strength, they learned about it from the rumors of the Tian Yuan continent. None of them had any idea just how many of the rumors were fake. Jian Chun swung his sword, and a black sword chi an arm thick shot through the air like a bolt of lightning. It disappeared into the loose sand below in a single instant. The sword chi possessed the might of a 7 heavenly layer Saint King, so it shot toward the divine hall 100 meters below. Although it was nowhere near enough to break through the divine hall, it was enough to shake it. The divine hall shook violently, alarming all the people within it. The next moment, a black figure shot out of it with lightning-like speed, emerging with a powerful presence. It faced against Jian Chun's group. It was a person completely shrouded by black robes. The figure's appearance was completely obscured, making it impossible to distinguish whether the figure was a man or a woman. The figure bore the presence of a 5th heavenly layer Saint King. "Who are you? Why are you provoking my underworld sect?" The shrouded person questioned in a heavy, hoarse voice, again, making it impossible to distinguish their gender. "Ha ha ha, Luo Qi, isn't your memory a little too horrible? It's only been 1,000 years, yet you've forgotten your old friends," sneered Jiang Wang. "It's you, Jiang Wang. You're all people from the Bloodsword sect." The shrouded person's voice was filled with shock. It continued, "Hasn't the Bloodsword sect stepped back from the continent and no longer bothers with any matters that have to do with the continent? I wonder why you've come with such a great party then." "Luo Qi, this is the new sect master of our Bloodsword sect. By the orders of the sect master, we have returned, and you, the underworld sect, will be an offering for our return," laughed Jiang Wang. "Humph, you still don't have the right to wipe out my underworld sect," sneered the shrouded figure. Its voice was filled with disdain. "It's still not up to you to decide whether we have the right or not," Jian Chun coldly replied. He took a step and arrived by the side of the shrouded figure, stabbing his emperor armament at the person's head. The shrouded figure was secretly shocked when it sensed the strength of Jian Chun's attack. However, It did not move slowly at all. Vast amounts of darkness-attributed saint force surged from a palm, immediately condensing into a small black dagger. Without retreating at all, they dodged Jian Chen's sword while the dagger lashed out like a calm viper, soundlessly stabbing toward the center of Jian Chen's forehead as a black streak of light. The corner of Jian Chen's lips curled up in disdain. Rotating his wrist, he redirected the sword toward the figure's head. If Jian Chen's first strike possessed speed that was nothing spectacular, the second attack was unbelievably fast. A pitch-black crack formed wherever the sword swept past. The shrouded figure was surprised inside. Jian Chen's attack was just too fast, so fast that as a fifth heavenly layer Saint King, the figure had almost failed to react. It was already too late to dodge, so without any other choices, the figure could only redirect the dagger to parry the Emperor armament. A boom immediately erupted when the two weapons clashed. A powerful ripple of energy spread out with the two of them as the epicenter, wreaking havoc in all directions as a wave. Jian Chen's strike possessed the strength of a seventh heavenly layer Saint King, so how could the shrouded figure block it? The figure was immediately sent into a rapid retreat. The strength of the new sect master is so powerful. Actually at the seventh heavenly layer, there's no one in the sect that his opponent other than the former sect master, who's in seclusion. The shrouded person was secretly astounded. It immediately abandoned the battle, quickly charging underground. As long as the figure made it back to the Divine Hall, it would be invincible. However, a bone-chilling event hit the person just as they moved. Jian Chen arrived by their side like a ghost while the black light on the Emperor armament surged, stabbing out again with lightning-like speed. The tip of the sword was less than 3 inches away from the person's forehead. They could even feel a stabbing pain from the figure's soul at such a close range, as if his or her soul was about to be ripped into pieces. The shrouded figure paled in fright. Other than Houston 1,000 years ago, this was the first time it had ever felt so close to death. At this crucial moment, the person spat out a mouthful of thick, black mist and yelled, "Darkness art, afterimage clone!" Jian Chen's Emperor armament stabbed into the person's head as soon as the figure yelled. However, Jian Chen did not rejoice and instead frowned. His sword failed to land. Bang! As soon as that thought crossed Jian Chen's mind, the black figure exploded loudly. It turned into dense black mist, quickly expanding and engulfing Jian Chen. The mist was no ordinary mist, but formed from darkness-attributed saint force. Even Jian Chen's visibility was severely limited within the mist. Suddenly, a small, black dagger appeared silently behind him. The dagger had completely fused with the mist, so it was extremely difficult to sense no matter how sharp Jian Chen's senses were. However, Jian Chen suddenly turned around just as the dagger was about to stab him. He swung his Emperor armament without any hesitation, and the chaotic force on the weapon cleaved through the space. The stroke was extremely powerful, enough to affect the space in the region of 100 meters, causing it to violently pulse. Arg! With a painful cry, a bloodied hand fell out of the sky with the dagger, before it could deal a fatal strike to Jian Chen. Not only did the shrouded person fail to assassinate Jian Chen in the mist, that figure even lost an arm. The mist slowly dispersed and Jian Chen gradually appeared before everyone. However, the shrouded figure had already disappeared. The vice sect master and the 5 elders could not help but feel relieved when they saw Jian Chen perfectly fine. Although they knew that he was very powerful, the opponent this time was an expert of the underworld sect, who was skilled in assassination techniques. There was the threat of dying with the slightest carelessness. "Sect master, are you alright? Where's Luoqi?" Jiang Wang arrived beside Jian Chen and asked about his well-being. Jian Chen was calm and composed. He gently shook his head. "He's still not enough to pose a threat to me, but he sure ran pretty quickly." After severing his arm, he immediately fled into the sand and into the Divine Hall. Jian Chen put it lightly, but Jiang Wang and the 5 elders were all secretly stunned. A 5th heavenly layer Saint King of the underworld sect, skilled in assassination, was actually not enough to pose a threat to him, which convinced them of his strength again. At this moment, Jiang Wang and the 5 elders all agreed inside that Jian Chen was even more powerful than the rumors. "Hey you! Yeah you! Another survey," Chapter 12:16. Wiping out the underworld sect. 2. Suddenly, the sand underneath began to violently churn. A divine hall shot out, slowly emerging with a vast presence. That's the darkness divine hall of the underworld sect. Jiang Wang immediately cried as he watched the giant divine hall slowly emerge from the sand. He became stern. Although he knew that Jian Chun had a method to break through it, its tough defenses still pressured him on a psychological level. This was because if they could not smash through it, they would not be able to touch the assassins hiding inside. And a Saint Emperor's power was required to smash through it. Every single divine hall on the Tianyuan continent was created by Saint Emperors, so they possessed the power of Saint Emperors. Although this power could not be used to harm those outside the divine hall, it was the structure's strongest defense. It was not something that Saint Kings could break through even if they were at great perfection. My underworld sect has existed for over 100,000 years on the Tianyuan continent. So how can we be wiped out by you, the mere Bloodsword sect? Even with Houston's supreme strength 1,000 years ago, you still didn't have the power to wipe us out. So I'd like to see just how you will finish us off today. Luo Qi's furious voice rang from the divine hall. Under Luo Qi's control, the divine hall rapidly expanded before arriving above Jian Chun and the others. It shot down with its great presence. Jian Chun coldly smiled. A piece of jade had silently appeared in his hand, and by tightening his grip slightly, the jade piece was crushed into pieces. Sect Master, let's retreat, Jiang Wang suggested from beside Jian Chun before quickly retreating with the 5 elders and 4 protectors in attempt to escape the area covered by the divine hall. Although the structure did not possess any offensive capabilities, none of them wanted to be pressed into the sand. However, just when they had retreated by a few dozen meters and had yet to make it out, spatial force suddenly appeared near Jian Chun. 10 meters away from him, the space violently rippled, and it ripped open, forming a multicolored space gate. A vast pressure flooded out of the space gate the moment it formed, filling up the surroundings. The air around seemed to have stopped moving because of the vast pressure and became thick. The group of experts from the Bloodsword sect all froze as well, other than Jiang Wang, who was at the 3rd heavenly layer of Saint King. The elders and protectors felt like they were suffocating before the pressure. They felt like they had lost the ability to breathe. Jiang Wang and the elders were shocked while the 4 protectors maintained their composure. The pressure had greatly exceeded their former sect master's aura, making them believe that they were facing a Saint Emperor. The structure continued to rapidly descend as it grew closer from above, blotting out the sun like a dark cloud. As that happened, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu emerged side by side from the space gate. They noticed the divine hall in the sky as soon as they arrived, and a sliver of scorn immediately appeared in their eyes. Rui Jin slowly raised his hand and held up the divine hall with his right hand. With a creak, Rui Jin's hand actually forced the divine hall to suddenly halt from its descent, as if the huge divine hall was being held up by Rui Jin with a single hand. The eyes of Jiang Wang, the elders, and the protectors all narrowed at this sight. Stopping a divine hall with a single hand was not something a Saint King at great perfection could accomplish. The 6 of them had all become stunned by the supreme strength Rui Jin had displayed. Although they had heard rumors that Jian Chun possessed 3 experts who were no weaker than Saint Emperors by his side, they were still rumors after all. They thought the rumors had all been exaggerated, but what they were witnessing today validated the rumors. One of them could stop the descent of a divine hall with a single hand and appear as though they were at ease. With their understanding, only Saint Emperors could do something like that. Other than the 4 protectors who had already seen the trio's strength, all the other people's opinions of Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu underwent a drastic change. They all looked at them with unhideable respect. At this moment, Rui Jin's hand suddenly jerked, and a thunderous creak immediately appeared. The divine hall was actually thrown high up into the air, with just a jerk of his hand. Saint Emperors? You're Saint Emperors? Impossible, this is impossible. Other than the Path Lord of the Carnal Desires, there is no second Saint Emperor on the Tianyuan continent. Luo Qi's terrifying voice rang out of the divine hall, But something seemed to cross his mind very soon. Luo Qi cried out uncontrollably. I know. You're the three magical beast experts that follow the captain of the flame mercenaries. No one paid any attention to Luo Qi even though he was a fifth heavenly layer Saint King. At the same time, a dazzling streak of golden light suddenly appeared. Rui Jin had already drawn the sacred dragon's sword. Holding it above his head, his presence rapidly skyrocketed. He then chopped at the structure. With that attack, 100-meter golden sword Qi directly appeared. It possessed origin energy, an energy that could only be controlled by sovereign-like existences that had surpassed Saint Emperor and stepped into the origin realm. Even Saint Emperors needed to avoid it. The huge sword Qi landed on the divine hall, and it immediately rumbled loudly. The entire structure violently shook before splitting in half while Jian Chun and the others were filled with disbelief. The divine hall had actually been chopped in half with a single stroke from Rui Jin. Impossible. This is impossible. Luo Qi cried out in disbelief. The divine hall had been what the underworld sect relied on the most. It was also their greatest trump card in regards to protecting themselves. But someone had actually split the structure in half, such that their terrifying might utterly frighten Luo Qi. Hong Lian and He Yu stared at the falling ruined divine hall in secret shock. Although the two of them could smash through the divine hall with their origin energy weapons, they could not have done it as easily as Rui Jin, who had split the whole thing in half with a single attack. Rui Jin, you must be close to breaking through. Hong Lian suddenly turned her head to Rui Jin. A red light danced in her eyes like flames. Rui Jin put away the weapon and indifferently replied, I've already touched that barrier. I believe I can become a Saint Emperor within 50 years. Jian Chun was surprised by that. His face immediately became filled with joy. He emotionally asked, Senior Rui Jin, you're about to become a Saint Emperor? Rui Jin smiled at how excited Jian Chun had become. He said, the reason why the current world lacks Saint Emperors is all because of the lack of origin energy. My sacred dragon's sword and sacred dragon's armor possess it, so breaking through obviously won't be a problem. It's the same for Hong Lian and He Yu. It's just a matter of time. Jian Chun sucked in a deep breath and slowly calmed himself down, but he found it difficult to suppress the joy inside. It was as if he had already witnessed the moment when all three of them became Saint Emperors, a moment that would happen in a few decades. Boom! Boom! At this moment, two rumbles rang out nearby. The divine hall no longer possessed the power to remain levitating after being split in half by Rui Jin, so it landed in the sand. Countless black-robed assassins quickly charged out from the ruined divine hall, fleeing into the distance as quickly as they could. None of them are allowed to escape. Kill! Jian Chen's eyes grew cold, and he immediately ordered the experts of the Bloodsword sect to attack, before using the illusory flash to arrive atop the ruined structure. His emperor armament turned into a cascade of afterimages as he stabbed at the assassins that slipped out of the structure, killing over 10 people in the blink of an eye. Jiang Wang, the elders and the protectors hunted down the assassins that fled in all directions. Although they were saint rulers or even saint kings who could not commit enormous massacres, they still hunted down the assassins in order to wipe out the underworld sect. And even if celestial decay would occur after killing far too many people, that would only happen if hundreds of thousands, or even more people were slaughtered. The underworld sect was only a few thousand people, and every single one of them had hands dyed with blood. They had even less need to worry about celestial decay with that. Now that the item that the underworld sect relied on the most was gone, all the assassins were greatly affected at a psychological level. Every single one of them became dejected and lost the courage to battle. As soon as they made it out of the divine hall, they would immediately charge off into the distance. Jiang Wang, the elders, and the protectors used everything they had to kill the fleeing assassins. Since all those below Saint Ruler were ants, even the Heaven Saint Masters had no power to fight back against Saint Ruler abilities. With a single thought, a Saint Ruler could freeze a region of space and trap several assassins of the underworld sect there before easily killing them off. At this moment, over 10 assassins from the underworld sect, dressed in the same attire, charged out of the divine hall by concealing themselves in groups of people. As soon as they made it outside, they fused with the surrounding space, fleeing at an unbelievable pace as a blur. It's the saint rulers of the underworld sect. Don't let any of them escape, Jiang Wang exclaimed. He gave up on the heaven saint masters he had immobilized with his frozen space, and chased after a ninth heavenly layer saint ruler. The elders and protectors gave up on their small fry as well, all chasing after the fleeing saint rulers. Ruijin suddenly formed a seal with his hands and called out, "Secret technique of the Dragon Clan, Dragon's Domain." With that, a halo of golden light rapidly expanded from Ruijin, covering the surroundings with unbelievable speed. It covered over 1,000 kilometers in the blink of an eye. The region within a radius of over 1,000 kilometers became slightly golden. This was Ruijin's Dragon's Domain, which turned a certain region of the surrounding space into his own domain. Other than Hong Lian, Ruijin, Jianchun, newbies, and the people of the Bloodsword sect, all the people in the space felt like they had suddenly been trapped by an invisible force, making them move much slower. They felt like they were in treacle. Only the saint rulers could resist this slowing effect with their full strength. All those below saint ruler were completely immobilized. Hey you, yeah you. Another survey. Chapter 12:17. Ancient teleportation formation. Ruijin's Dragon's Domain had already engulfed a radius of 1,000 kilometers, but it had only been a few seconds since the divine hall of the underworld sect had been destroyed. In such a short amount of time, even saint rulers could not traverse 1,000 kilometers, so all the assassins were trapped in the domain as soon as it formed. No one managed to flee successfully. Jiang Wang and the 5 protectors had all caught up with the saint rulers now, and began a great fight with everything they had. All the saint rulers of the underworld sect used darkness-attributed saint force, so they all used secret techniques to morph into dense, black mist as soon as the battle began. They engulfed a certain range, silently moving through the mist in search of an opportunity to deal a sneak attack on their enemies. The saint rulers of the underworld sect mainly used their darkness-attributed saint force to assassinate their targets, while the Bloodsword sect used baleful force as their trump card. All the assassination organizations used unique techniques. However, none of them used baleful force in their fight against the saint rulers of the underworld sect. Baleful force was refined through slaughter, so it was just too valuable to saint rulers. Even though that was the case, the experts of the Bloodsword sect gained the upper hand, since they were unaffected by the Dragon's Domain, and, hence, at a complete advantage. On the other hand, the saint rulers of the underworld sect struggled to use 70 to 80% of their power under the restraint of the Dragon's Domain. Bang! Jiang Wang casually struck the head of a saint ruler with his hand, blowing the head up on the spot and wiping out the soul. At the same time, a 9th heavenly layer elder killed his opponent as well. A blood-red spike passed through the forehead of his enemy before emerging from the other side. It completely passed through the person's head and dissipated his opponent's soul before he could flee. Jianchun did not take part in the battle, and instead stood with newbies. He constantly looked around with sharp eyes. He planned on leaving all the saint rulers to Jiang Wang and the elders. He would not bother with personally dealing with those who were weaker. Odd Jianchun. Why don't I see that dude with the arm you took? Newbie stood beside Jianchun with his arms crossed as he constantly looked around searching. Jianchun frowned slightly. He too had been waiting for Luoqi this entire time, but he still had not seen Luoqi flee from the Divine Hall. Although the Divine Hall was now ruined, the power inside had yet to dissipate completely, so his presence could not enter the structure. Perhaps Luoqi is still hiding within the Divine Hall? Jianchun mumbled to himself. Although all the assassins that fled from the Divine Hall wore the exact same thing, none of them could escape his presence. He did not find Luoqi at all. "I'll enter the Divine Hall and have a look," said Jianchun before entering the ruins. Newbies followed him in as well. The Divine Hall was pitch black inside. The darkness-attributed saint force was extremely dense. For those who used darkness-attributed saint force, Cultivating inside would have been extremely effective, but the structure was now destroyed, so the Saint force was slowly dissipating. The power of the Divine Hall dispersed rapidly as well. Jianchen stood with newbies in the dark structure. He frowned slightly, because their visibility was limited to 5 meters due to the darkness. Do you think darkness attributed Saint force is enough to stop me, the great newbies? Newbie sneered. He then immediately began to shine with a dazzling golden glow. He was like a miniature sun in the Divine Hall, where the Saint force dispersed as soon as it came in contact with the light. In the blink of an eye, the Divine Hall cleared up. They were inside a well-adorned hall. It was empty, only possessing a few valuable decorations. Jianchen ignored the decor and looked around. He said, Luo Qi must be hiding in this Divine Hall. Let's look around first. We can't let him escape, or it'll cause endless future problems. We have the 3 seniors watching guard outside, so we don't need to worry about Luo Qi fleeing from another exit while we're in here. Jianchen and newbies began to look through the Divine Hall. There was still some residual power of the Divine Hall in the surrounding walls, obstructing Jianchen's presence. As a result, they could only search slowly. Along the way, Jianchen came across quite a few tunnels that had been hidden by walls, as well as formations that were concealed everywhere. However, they were all smashed through by the 2 of them. The toughness of the Divine Hall and the formations inside were supported by the Divine Hall's power. So as it slowly dissipated, both the walls and formations weakened greatly. At this moment, in an extremely well-hidden room within the Divine Hall, a shrouded person, who was missing an arm, stood with a short old man. The old man was rather pale, but his eyes shone with vigor. Luo Qi, there's already been 2 people who've entered the Divine Hall. It probably won't take them long to arrive here. We need to leave as soon as possible, the old man said softly and indifferently. Former sect master, we're not going to bother with the other people of the sect. Luo Qi asked hoarsely. They can destroy the Darkness Divine Hall with a single strike, so they must be at the level of Saint Emperors. Against such opponents, I wouldn't even have the power to fight back even if I was at my peak. This baleful force sure is powerful. I was injured by Houston's baleful force 1,000 years ago. My soul still hasn't recovered after 1,000 years of resting, the old man coldly stated. He was still filled with much hatred. All the people of the Bloodsword sect are outside right now, as well as the 3 terrifyingly powerful magical beasts. We'll definitely be discovered if we go out. So how should we leave? Luo Qi asked. I already understand the situation outside. An expert has already cast an absolute secret technique to engulf the surrounding radius of 1,000 kilometers. We definitely can't go outside, but we still have one thing we've been holding back, or we'll probably end up dead today. The short old man spoke in a heavy voice. Darkness attributed Saint force surged from his feet into the ground. Gradually, an extremely complicated formation appeared beneath them. This is a space gate. Can we leave through a space gate in the Divine Hall? Isn't it impossible to rip open space in the Divine Hall? Luo Qi asked doubtfully. The short old man coldly smiled with that. This is no space gate, but an ancient teleportation formation. It was accidentally obtained by the sect several tens of thousand years ago, and it was cast here to prepare for the day when we suffer devastating attacks from enemies. It can allow us to avoid this disaster, and once it's used, the formation will shatter by itself. There's no need to worry about people following our tracks. Luo Qi rejoiced inside. He said, let me go get the Saint tier battle skill first, and then we can leave. There's not enough time. The 2 of them are already close, so we need to leave immediately. Otherwise, we won't be able to leave if they destroy the formation, replied the old man. The teleportation formation was activated very quickly. With a violent rippling of space, the 2 of them disappeared. Several hundred meters away, Jianchen and newbies continued to search, headed in the direction of the room. The Divine Hall's power was much thinner than before, so Jianchen's presence could pass through a few obstructions with some difficulty. When Luo Qi and the old man left through the teleportation formation, Jianchen's expression changed. He could suddenly feel an extremely minute rippling of space, so he quickly ran in the direction without a second thought. Boom! Jianchen cut down the entrance with a single stroke after arriving outside the room. The rippling of space that filled the room became even more intense now that the door was gone. But there was not a single person in it, only a destroyed formation on the ground. Jianchen sighed when he saw the formation. We've come too late. They've already left. I never thought they could leave through a space gate in the Divine Hall. Newbie's face became rather sunken. He knew exactly what it meant for a fifth heavenly layer Saint King to flee. Their future problems would be unending once they decided to take revenge, and it would become an extremely annoying situation, let alone the fact that the person who escaped was a Saint King assassin. Jianchen, what do we do? Newbie's complexion became rather ugly. He had already become great friends with Jianchen since what had happened in the past, so he obviously treated Jianchen's business as his own. Jianchen furrowed his brows in thought before relaxing soon after. His greatest worry was the Changyang clan and his friends in the Flame Mercenaries, but the Changyang clan was now protected by Changyang Zuyunshao, who was basically on par with the Saint King at great perfection, so the clan were basically impregnable. He planned on asking Ruijin, Hong Lian, and He Yu to look over the Flame Mercenaries. Yu could help as well, so he would no longer have to worry about Bai Lian and the others' safety once the Bright Moon Divine Hall was present. Afterward, Jianchen and newbies began to search the Divine Hall. They found a huge stone tablet lodged into a stone wall in a neighboring room. What surprised Jianchen was that it was actually a complete Saint tier battle skill. Jianchen began to remove the stone tablet from the wall without any hesitation. Only after a tremendous amount of effort did he finally succeed in removing the tablet. It was only 5 meters long, but it was exceptionally heavy, countless times heavier than metal. Even with Jianchen's current strength, he needed to use quite some power to lift it up. The Saint tier battle skill recorded in the stone tablet was a fist technique, which was unsuitable for Jianchen. Jianchen walked a different path of cultivation from the people of the Tianyuan continent, so he could not practice Saint tier battle skills. He threw the tablet into the artifact space, planning to get the elites in there to comprehend the Saint tier battle skill after they became Saint rulers. Chapter 12:18. Proceeding to the Ice Goddess Hall. 1. Jianchen and newbies searched through the Darkness Divine Hall again after removing the Saint tier battle skill. But it was a pity that they did not obtain anything else. Jianchen was still very satisfied, however, since a complete Saint tier battle skill was the greatest item he could have found. Jianchen and newbies left the Darkness Divine Hall and returned to the other people's side. They saw that the experts of the Bloodsword sect had already been waiting for quite some time, as they had already killed off the several thousand assassins of the Underworld sect. Sect Master, where's Luoqi? And the Sect Master of the Underworld sect, Gu Zhen? I suspect that he's still alive and probably hiding somewhere in the Divine Hall, Jiang Wang asked courteously. He felt rather surprised when he did not see Luoqi's corpse. They fled. I never thought that they hit a space gate in the Divine Hall, Jianchen said with some regret. Ruijin furrowed his brows slightly with that. He said, in my dragon's domain, space gates can't form at all. How can they flee through a space gate? I'll go check out the place where they used the space gate. Ruijin entered the ruined Divine Hall with that while Jianchen and the others followed behind. In the room Luoqi and the old man had fled from, Ruijin, Hong Lian, He Yu, Jianchen, and the others stood around, examining the formation on the floor. This isn't a space gate. Hong Lian fixedly stared at the formation on the ground and realized that there was something wrong very quickly. Fixed space gates were similar to the formation on the ground, but there was an extremely clear difference between the two. Correct. This isn't a space gate, but an ancient teleportation formation. I never thought that something like this would be here. No wonder they managed to flee my dragon's domain, said Ruijin. An ancient teleportation formation? Jianchen murmured. He was filled with curiosity, and even Jiang Wang and newbies became doubtful. Ruijin explained, I've only found information regarding the teleportation formation from my inherited memories. These formations only appeared in ancient times and were extremely valuable. Not only do they have similar uses as space gates, able to teleport a certain number of people or things, they're completely unaffected by the surrounding space, so they can be used even in heavily distorted or even shattered space. The teleportation distance is extremely far away as well, and can break through all limitations of space. They are far more powerful than space gates. But according to my inherited memories, even in ancient times, these formations were extremely rare. No one knows their origins, and there was no one who could make them, because the requirements for creating one were just far too great. You would need to reach an utmost mastery with formations, and then possess an extremely great comprehension of space. No one could fulfill these two requirements in ancient times, especially in regard to the comprehension of space. Even the level of Saint Emperors was nowhere near enough. The teleportation formations from ancient times seem to have appeared out of nowhere, and were slowly used up. I never thought I'd actually see one today. I never thought that the underworld sect would actually be in possession of such a valuable teleportation formation. Looks like they were not fated to die today, Jianchen thought. After learning about the teleportation formation, he knew that it was impossible to stop them from getting away today. The former sect master of the underworld sect, Gu Zhen, is still likely to be alive. Looks like he left with Luoqi. I just wonder if Gu Zhen has fully healed from his wounds, and whether he's made any improvements in his cultivation. 1,000 years ago, Gu Zhen was an 8th heavenly layer Saint King. So if he did, that would be troublesome, Jiang Wang worried. Vice Sect Master, don't worry. Uncle Xiao has handed the Blood Divine Hall to me. I'll give you control of the Divine Hall. So even if the Sect Master makes a full recovery, he won't be able to do anything to you with the Divine Hall, said Jianchen. They did not stick around for long, leaving the desert very quickly. All the space rings from the assassins were handed to Jianchen as well, but Jianchen only glanced through them. He passed them all to Jiang Wang after seeing that there was nothing that he needed in them. Although there were quite a decent amount of wealth in all the space rings, money no longer held any true value to Jianchen. Jianchen did not return to the base of the Bloodsword sect. After handing over the Divine Hall he had obtained from Uncle Xiao, he went to the Changyang clan with Rui Jin and the others. Since they had already confirmed that at least 2 Saint Kings had managed to flee, the Bloodsword sect needed to make preparations to protect themselves. Currently, they only had Jiang Wang as their Saint King, and he was only of the 3rd heavenly layer. He was not an opponent of any of the Saint Kings that managed to flee, so handing the Divine Hall to Jiang Wang could protect them against Luoqi and Gu Zhen's revenge. Pondering over the problem after returning to the Changyang clan, Jianchen still ended up getting Yu to watch over the flame mercenaries for a while. Although Yu was still weak, he clearly felt much safer about it when he thought about Yu's powerful master. Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and Heiyu had already helped him enough in recent times, so Jianchen could not shamelessly request them to watch over the flame mercenaries. Jianchen had sent out all the scouts of the Bloodsword sect as well, searching for the experts who had fled everywhere on the continent. Although Jianchen knew that it would probably amount to nothing, he would not give up on the slightest hope. Every single day that the Saint Kings were still alive would be another day he was unable to be at peace. In recent times, the most popular topic of discussions across the continent was the Bloodsword sect. The Bloodsword sect that had vanished for 1,000 years had actually reappeared. Not only did it draw a great deal of attention from various organizations, the sect even did something that shocked countless people. All the hidden bases of the underworld sect scattered across the continent were found by the Bloodsword sect and washed with blood. An even more shocking piece of news swept through the continent closely after that. The underworld sect that had existed for over 100,000 years on the continent had actually been wiped out by the Bloodsword sect, stunning countless people. The disturbance created by the news was so great that even Mercenary City and the 3 great empires were affected. After all, the Bloodsword sect was an organization equivalent to an ancient clan. Coupled with Houston, who was at the great perfection of Saint King, they would be an absolute existence even among ancient clans. It was impossible for such a great organization to not cause a disturbance after it suddenly returned. Jianchen did not pay attention to the commotion on the continent while he stayed in the Changyang clan. He was currently with his second aunt, Yu Fengyan, in a pavilion within the garden. Yu Fengyan's eyes were red and swollen. Streaks of tears covered her face. She constantly used her silk handkerchief to wipe away more tears. She had missed her daughter for many years now. Other than returning once when Jianchen had been forced off the continent, she had not received any news of Changyang Mingyue since, which made Yu Fengyan worry, since she only had one daughter. She basically spent all her time thinking about her daughter, and she had become much more haggard after all these years of longing. Yu Fengyan's yearning for her daughter reached an unprecedented peak with Changyang's return. She finally came and found Jianchen, after no longer able to hold it in. Xiangtian, I know you're a famed expert of the continent now, but I miss Mingyue far too much. Can you take me to see Mingyue? I'm begging you. I just want to catch a single glance of her, and then I'll be happy, sobbed Yu Fengyan. She was extremely sad. Chapter 12:19. Proceeding to the Ice Goddess Hall. 2. Jianchen felt rather pained when he saw just how distressed Yu Fengyan was. His second aunt held an extremely important position in his heart, even greater than his own father. This was because when he was young, Yu Fengyan cared for him the second most behind his own mother. Even his father's care was nowhere near how much Yu Fengyan cared for him, especially after he had undergone the Saint's test. Once he had been tested to be unable to use Saint Force, and was labeled as a cripple, Changyang Ba visited him even less. Back then, only by Yuntian, Yu Fengjiang, and Changyang Mingyue out of the entire clan cared for him. Jianchen could feel exactly how Yu Fengyan felt when he watched her in so much heart-aching pain. He could also sense her feeling of helplessness. Ignoring the fact that the Arctic Ice Goddess Hall was not on the Tianyuan continent, and was extremely far away, just the icy climate there was enough to prevent Heaven Saint Masters from getting anywhere close. Even fire-attributed Heaven Saint Masters could be frozen into an ice cube, so only Saint Rulers could survive there. Although the clan now had around a dozen Saint Rulers and several Saint Kings, every single one of them possessed great statuses. Even the patriarch of the clan, Changyang Ba, needed to greet them politely when he saw them, let alone Yu Fengyan, who was only one of Changyang Ba's many wives. On the surface, Yu Fengyan was the second madam of the clan and possessed great status, but she was nothing in front of the people who had broken away from the Protector clan. Without any doubt, requesting one of the Saint Rulers to take her to the Arctic was an absurd dream with her current status. She did not even have the right to meet them. As a result, Yu Fengyan could only find Jianchen. She had already begun to treat Jianchen as her only hope to see her daughter again. Jianchen pondered the request. Although some people had managed to flee from the underworld sect, including the former sect master, who was even more powerful than Luo Qi, he was not exactly helpless against them. At the same time, it had been such a long time since he had last seen his sister that he missed her as well. Jianchen made up his mind with that. He said, "Auntie, don't be so sad. Let me organize some things, and then I'll take you to the Arctic to go look for sister." "Really? Xiangtian, are you really going to take me to see Mingyue?" Yu Fengyan was overjoyed. She grabbed Jianchen's hands excitedly. She knew that if Jianchen turned her down, she would probably never see her daughter ever again, unless Changyang Mingyue returned herself. Jianchen nodded. "Of course I'm going to. Auntie, go rest for a while. I'll go organize some things immediately, and then I'll take you with me to the Arctic." Jianchen left the garden and made his way to the back courtyards of the clan. The back courtyards had already become the forbidden grounds of the Changyang clan. No guard was allowed to approach them, and even the patriarch and other important figures of the clan were forbidden from entering the place without giving a prior warning, because that was where Changyang Zuxiao stayed. Other than Changyang Zuxiao, even Changyang Zuyinxiao, Changyang Zuyian, and the dozen or so Saint Rulers that had left the Protector clan lived there as well. Meanwhile, all the people that guarded the place were replaced by the Heaven Saint Masters that had left the clan with them. Jianchen saw 4 Heaven Saint Masters sitting at the entrance to the back courtyards as soon as he approached the area. The surroundings were in utter silence. The four Heaven Saint Masters opened their eyes at the same time when Jianchen arrived. After recognizing Jianchen, they immediately stood up and politely bowed to him. Even the patriarch of the clan, Changyang Ba, needed to send a message before he could to enter, but Jianchen did not need to. He could go in and out as he wished and no one would stop him. Jianchen amicably nodded to the Heaven Saint Masters before entering the Forbidden Grounds without any resistance. He had not seen the four Heaven Saint Masters before, but he knew they all belonged to the Zhu branch of the Protector clan. They had all come with Changyang Zuxiao. Jianchen had heard about how the back courtyards had become the Forbidden Grounds long ago. He did not mind, and even supported the changes. After all, the people who had settled down here had been lead over by Changyang Zuxiao and Changyang Zuyinxiao. Changyang Zuxiao was a saint king, who was already approaching great perfection. Most importantly, Changyang Zuxiao and Changyang Zuxiao had left the Protector clan to help him. So even though Jianchen's relationship with them was not deep, he still felt respect for them from the bottom of his heart. Jianchen met Changyang Zuxiao in a simply adorned hall. Changyang Zuxiao's hair was pale gray. He seemed even older than he had been back in the Protector clan, and he seemed rather haggard as well. Clearly, leaving the Protector Changyang clan had affected Changyang Zuxiao on a psychological level. After all, it had been his home for several thousand years. He had deep feelings for it. Jianchen first bowed toward Changyang Zuxiao, greeting him as a junior, before explaining the reason why he had come. He had come to find Changyang Zuxiao this time to ask him to prepare against the Saint Kings of the Underworld sect, to make sure they couldn't do anything detrimental to the clan. Xiang'er, you don't need to worry about that. Although I can't find Saint Kings hiding in the Jessen Kingdom, no Saint King can escape my senses if they enter this small city. The ancient secret techniques of the Protector clans are not as simple as that. However, if the Saint Kings choose to attempt an assassination, I can only protect this city. I am helpless to help the royal family of the kingdom. Considering the fact that your fiancée is a part of the royal family and is the daughter of the king, I'll get Yunxiao to guard the palace. Yunxiao might only be at the 5th heavenly layer, but he knows quite a few secret techniques. Ordinary Saint Kings are not his opponent in a fight, Changyang Zuxiao said amicably. He treated Jianchen with great importance, so he completely considered everything related to Jianchen in this matter. Jianchen completely stopped worrying after listening to what Changyang Zuxiao had to say. Hesitating slightly, he asked again, "Great-grandfather, may I ask how much you know about the Arctic Ice Goddess Hall?" Changyang Zuxiao frowned slightly when he heard the name Arctic Ice Goddess Hall. Only after a moment of silence did he say, "All of my understanding of the Ice Goddess Hall comes from the ancient records of the Protector clan, which all originate from the ancient times, personally written by Saint Emperors. I only know that the organization is extremely powerful, such that even the 4 sovereigns from the ancient times did not venture there. No one knows when the Ice Goddess Hall appeared, but they never interfere with the matters of the continent, nor do they ever appear on the continent. No one else even knows of their existence other than Mercenary City and the 10 Protector clans. Their descent over a decade ago was the first time in the past million years, and it was all recorded by the Protector clans." Changyang Zuxiao suddenly stared at Jianchen sternly. He asked with a heavy voice, "Xiang'er, do you plan on visiting the Ice Goddess Hall?" "Correct. My sister is there and I want to visit her," Jianchen confessed. Changyang Zuxiao stayed silent for a while before replying with a heavy voice. "Although I've never been to the Ice Goddess Hall, I do know that it is extremely terrifying, because every single record from the Saint Emperor ancestors have warned the descendants to never offend them or try look for them. They must possess some terrifying person, but after so many years, that person feared by our Saint Emperor ancestors must have passed away. However, I still hope you can reconsider your choice. It's best if you don't go. Since the Ice Goddess Hall is so mysterious and power at the same time, why did they make my sister their holy maiden? I don't know if they're scheming something, but you're right. No matter how powerful that person was, even if they had already surpassed Saint Emperor, it's impossible for them to live for so long, so they can't be as terrifying as the past. I need to go, replied Jianchen. Since you've already made up your mind, I won't stop you. But do be careful. Changyang Zhu Xiao gave up on stopping Jianchen, seeing how he could not persuade him. Jianchen left the back courtyards before going to find Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu again. Jianchen needed to be cautious with the mysterious and powerful ice goddess Hall. So in order to deal with unforeseen events, he ended up deciding on bringing the three of them with him. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.